Well, thanks.
So I mean, it seems pretty applicable. I'm not sure if like the
Not sure of what.
conservative thing, because I mean, you do have a little bit of liberal viewpoints on certain aspects, not everything, right? Because I mean, the supposedly the dichotomy is liberal versus conservative.
All right. I mean, my current channel name is supposed to be like a combination of libertarian and conservative.
Yeah.
Charles C.W.
Okay.
Cook had an interview talking about that term
Oh,
on Reason
conservative.
TV.
Okay, so it's kind of a mix between conservative and yeah, then that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a real term that S Man actually introduced me to. I thought,
Oh,
hey, sounds cool.
whoops. I thought that it said preview, but I apparently clicked the button, and so we are live.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's only
I
been
just
going for.
noticed.
So we're kind of it went live kind of mid sentence there, because I was setting up and I just changed the name of the video to make it match, and then I hit the button, which is normally the preview button, and it said preview, but apparently it went live. So maybe that was a little hiccup on Google's end. Okay, so this is the fourth and last time that we're going to be talking about the Richard Spencer versus Sargon versus Styx debate. I've cut it down the rest of the debate to about 14 minutes total. So there was another 2 hours and 15 minutes left of just Sargon and Spencer and Styx going at it. And then there was another hour long Q&A session at the end that was just Warski and JF. Yeah, so I tried to condense it down to as to get the key points of the remainder of what they talked about, but there was a lot of repetition and Spencer going back to original points. So hopefully I got all the key points that I want to talk about in this last stream, and we're gonna try to get it done in about an hour and a half, and we're running slightly behind on schedule because I just got out of a webinar like 5 minutes till 6, and I'm like, okay, I've got 5 minutes to set this stream up. So that was fun. All right, and with
So
me this
just
week,
business as usual, huh?
yeah. So with me this week, I've got BTK, that is Bass Trap Kayla. Oh, and I was gonna ask you, but you kind of got cut off. Okay, right? May have asked you this previously or whatever. You don't care about pronouns, right? Or does it matter if I say he or she or I don't know
No,
which
I
one to
don't care.
use. Okay,
I
all
don't have
right.
time for that
Just make,
crap.
yeah, okay. I'm probably gonna keep asking you that every week that you show up until it finally clicks. Oh yeah, right. Doesn't matter.
Google it is in the chat, straw manning me.
Well, I mean, when is Google not saying something stupid or straw manning someone?
Well, yeah, it is mostly
Neoconservative.
just a bunch of
Zach has
kidding around. But anyway, I don't want to like
okay.
turn this into a roast off with
Yeah.
Google. Not
Well.
go too much
Google
on
it.
on a tangent.
I am in agreement. If Aspie actually thinks that, I am in agreement with that. I do think it is a type of mental illness, even if it's not in this similar way that depression is a mental illness.
Hey, who's the guy with the glasses and the subdued combat
Oh yeah, we
flag?
didn't introduce you. Sorry. This is Zach, aka the Dark Conservatarian.
Or you can call me Dark Con.
I'm not gonna
But
do
yeah.
that.
Dark Conservatarian, Zach, Dark Con, or you can even call me JP like Bering has. I do
You
a
gotta
whole
do the
bunch of
robot voice when you gotta say.
or you can call me JP.
There you go.
Yeah, anyway, I do response videos a whole lot of times, mainly to progressives like the TYT crowd, and I have a
Oh.
news show that I like to call Strike Force.
All right, and so we've got Sinister in the Hangout. I don't think I actually sent him the invite.
Hey, HUMANE, you're gonna have to drop me a link to this guy's stuffs later.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I will link his channel in the chat. Oh, I haven't been linking your stuff in the description either.
Okay, anybody that's got a properly made combat flag, I'm interested in.
You talking about the U.S. flag behind me?
Yeah, it's reversed. It's subdued. I mean, it's the way it's supposed to be. I like it.
Oh, I guess I did. I just realized I guess I did put it in reverse. All right.
Yeah, that's how you're supposed to hang it.
Showed it in reverse. Unfortunately, it's so damn big that it's ending up draping on the floor.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
now that's a sin.
Yep. Now you gotta burn it. Actually, that's legitimately what you're supposed to do with a flag. It's not usually when it's
Grab a
touched the
razor,
floor.
separate the stripes, cut out all the stars, light a candle, burn it, and then put the 45. Wait, what?
Yeah, that's
Take the bullet out of
actually
the
the sign of
truck, put
respect.
it
But
in a 45.
usually that's not when it touches the ground. That's when it's dropped on not on the floor indoors or something along those lines. But
Yeah,
when it's
exterior.
exterior soil and all that sort of thing, it's considered
Google it.
You're not
punished.
supposed to soil it.
Okay, so
Google
before we
it,
get
what
too
the fuck
sidetracked
do you
here,
know?
oh,
Google it. What the fuck do you know about my positions on same-sex marriage?
all right, yeah, Sinister, I did send you the link. You can join in. I
Oh,
thought that you
speaking of
weren't available this Thursday, but I guess you are.
Speaking of same-sex marriage, I almost completely forgotten that I wanted to make a response video to Michael Knowles on him answering some guy's question about gay marriage. Yeah.
All right. Okay, there's Sinister. So I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, and so this is Sinister. He doesn't have a YouTube channel or anything like that, but he's been on these streams every once in a while. Oh, look, Google it
How
has
can
a
this guy
message
say
help
that
and
you
review.
can't be a libertarian doing to being pro-life and same-sex marriage? Neither one of those affect your status of being a libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, it goes off. I would be going off on a long tangent about abortion, but I've explained multiple times of why it isn't a contradiction to be a self-ascribed libertarian and also have the position of being anti-abortion. I mean, even Loudmouth Reviews had responded to S-Man Speaks on that position.
No,
It's not
and
a condition.
yeah, there's a bunch of libertarians that are in the pro-life movement. What's her name? Julie Borowski, Austin Peterson. It's not a select few or anything like that. It's about 50%
I don't see
of
what that
libertarians.
even has to do with being libertarian.
It's
still down
separate.
to your personal choice, which is what libertarians are for. So
That's what I was saying. It's
Yeah.
got nothing to do with being a libertarian. Come on.
So that's a separate issue.
you know, that's
so-
more just conservatism versus progressivism, I guess.
Okay.
Not necessarily libertarianism.
All right.
I'm
Without
not
getting too
strawmanning
sidetracked by Google it, let's
Sorry.
just kind of ignore them for now and actually start with the actual clips.
Ignore the
I
chat.
just wanna leave it off with Google it. Even if a person says that they think personally that it's a sin, that does not affect their legal perspective and that they think it should be legally allowed. Anyway,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
libertarians believe in freedom of religion as well.
Mhm.
So what's a sin for me might not be a sin to you. It's a sin for you in my eyes, but it's not a sin to you. I don't have any
Yeah.
right to prohibit you from doing it.
Yes.
okay, I'm going to try to ignore the no bullshit masquerading troll.
All right. So
yeah, we
let's...
typically just ignore the chat. We let.
Well, I usually get too
that
distracted to look at the chat and look
Sorry,
back later. I'm like,
yeah,
holy crap, that much has gone by in the chat. All right, let's at least
Yeah.
start the video. So there's about 14 minutes to get through, and we've got trying to get through it in an hour and a half. Let's see if we can do this.
Spencer, how would you implement the ethno-state without people getting killed?
People came here peacefully, therefore they could potentially leave peacefully.
Oh, all right, potentially, but what about the people who wouldn't want to leave peacefully?
Look, first off, there are many ways that this could be implemented completely peacefully. And actually, there are historical precedents for the creation of ethnostates. The Paris Peace Conference of 1919, following the First World War, was a redrawing of the map according to ethno-determinism. So there was a reinvention of Poland. There was a creation of new states like Yugoslavia. There was population transfers that were done by force, but were actually peaceful. So this can be done. It has been done in the past. There's been massive amounts of migration through planes, trains, and automobiles and ships. And this could be done peacefully.
Okay. So there's a little bit of a jump cut there, but...
He's talking about what has happened and not what will happen or what he wants to happen.
Well, the other thing is he's talking about where it worked out, right? He's talking about all the situations where, oh yeah, see, it has happened peacefully in these instances, and you're like, well, what about all the instances, like the overwhelming instances where it wasn't peaceful?
Missing is when they redrew the map, it's because those ethno-states, or if you want to call them ethno-states, already existed. Nobody forced it. That's where people already lived. So they redrew the map to encompass those different separate groups of people.
Yeah, there was a little bit of actual relocation, but usually that was getting people back to their homelands.
Correct. It wasn't forcing an entire ethnicity or race out of a certain area necessarily. Most of these particular divisions that were redrawn already existed pre-World War.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't trying to build an ethno-state. That was not even the purpose. So he's kind of comparing apples and oranges here.
Yeah, usually those people were displaced by war. And so then they're like, okay, well now the country's reforming and now we've got official borders, we got our own little section. And then people were trying to make their way back to that. And some people had to be forced or had government intervention or whatever in order to get them back to where they came from because they wanted to stay where they were. And I'm like, no, the war's over, all of this is settled, go back home. But mostly peaceful, whereas other instances of this, not so peaceful.
So I don't remember if this was earlier in their stream or if they even addressed it. I only caught part of the stream last week. It was the week I had my kids, so I couldn't join in. But did he ever point the necessity of an ethno-state or why people would even want an ethno-state?
No, he
because they kind of jumped onto how would you implement it.
He slightly touches on that in this clip, but it's not. It's he assumes that it's obvious why and that it's implied and that it's a net benefit, although he doesn't ever explain why it's a net benefit or what it actually solves. He never addresses that. The other thing about this particular
is they're already asking. Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say the reason I wanted to point out this particular clip because at the start he said, "Oh yeah, people migrated here peacefully on planes and trains and automobiles and stuff," and you're like, then what's going to stop them from doing that again? You're going to separate everybody out, and then naturally over time they're just going to mix and go wherever they want. So unless you have some way of making sure that everybody separates and then you say, hey, you stay there. Wait, what are you trying to do? You're trying to move countries? No, you can't do that. You stay in your country. In order to implement something like that, you would have to have control over the entire planet. You would have to have a centralized government that says, okay, hey, you belong in this ethno-state and you can't ever leave that ethno-state. That's what you would have to enforce in order to keep people from naturally migrating wherever there's economic opportunity or wherever there's resources or wherever.
So one point I kind of wanted to bring up, and it ties in with what he was just saying, because they're asking how he's going to implement it. If nobody wants it, it has to be implemented forcefully.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody wants it. You are going to have to force all whites to go into this ethno-state, whether they want to or not, and force everybody else out. If there's a mass population that did want it and it was just natural like he's assuming, which is why I asked if that was brought up, then it would more naturally happen as what already happened in Europe, which is why they redrew the boundaries.
Yeah.
So if people want it, it will just start to happen because that's what people are desiring. It seems the only people that want that are the extremists, like, BLM, or I don't know if like the LGBT community is now considering themselves kind of a separate ethnicity or race from everybody else. They want their own community. But it seems like only the extreme groups of people are the ones trying to divide everybody and separate it up. Everybody else just doesn't care.
Yeah.
If you're nice, you're cool with me, I'm cool with you. Fine. We'll just get along with our lives. That's about it. So I didn't know if Dark or BTK had any input as to why anybody would actually want an ethno state, and does that actually affect of it?
Well, I don't have much input to add as far as the redrawing of boundaries and borders, because you see, I honestly never known that. But obviously, I'm a libertarian. I believe in one person's self-ownership, and that people have the liberty to interracial marriage, marry if they want to, and legally migrate. Like, migration is obviously not a right, but if we are to not allow, I don't know. I guess I haven't gathered my thoughts real well before the stream.
Yeah, that's fine.
But equally amongst all the races. I mean, it's a different if you are going to like choose them based off of their skill, like meritocracy, have meritocracy immigration, but just discriminating that only one particular race, one particular color immigrates into some certain area. Yeah, I'm against that.
Yeah, and that's,
I mean, obviously,
we touched on that a
they're
little
all...
bit. Oh, sorry. Thought you were done.
Sorry. Yeah, I was kind of wrapping up, but there's little something that I want to add. I mean, obviously, darker skin come into the United States to reap the benefits of what our culture and our economy and whatnot has to offer.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that last week when we were talking about the race thing. And I said, according to Richard Spencer's ideology, he would rather have a white person who sleeps with his sister, has a bunch of kids out of wedlock, who parks his car on his lawn on cinder blocks, rather than having someone like Thomas Sowell or Ben Carson in his country. That's Richard Spencer's ideal utopian. Oh, hey, these guys are white and they're trailer trash. I mean, that's just... But I'd rather have one of those than someone like, I guess, trying to think of Denzel Washington. And you're like, really? You'd rather have like Jethro from the Hillbillies than someone like than someone who's like an upstanding individual in society, who's actually a good role model. You'd rather have somebody who actually contributes to society like that. You'd rather have, keep someone who contributes to society like that out of the country just based on their race, and keep the people who overall are like, what is Billy Bob adding to the country?
I read a comment one time, I cannot remember under which video it was, but somebody made the comment that ethnostatism ends up with people like Trigglypuff staying and Thomas Sowell leaving.
Yes, yeah. That's essentially what Spencer would be arguing for. He wants Trigglypuffs and no Thomas Sowells.
Well, so then it seems like his are extremely misaligned, because he is assuming that white people have this spiritual bond that brings out these morals, brings out these values. And when you look at diversity just within white people in the U.S., that's not apparent anywhere. There's a massive difference between a greedy business tycoon, a redneck, just your regular urbanite, and a rural small town person. They all have different values, different goals in life, different pursuits. So what he's assuming would naturally bind people doesn't even exist in the real world.
No.
In fact, what naturally binds people is their own beliefs and ideas. So a Christian white person are going to have a lot more in common than someone from, maybe an atheist LGBT person and a Christian white person. They are not really going to see eye to eye.
Yeah, when it comes...
Natural assumptions are way off base. That's not even legitimate in the real world. Even in the white race, if you look at Europe, they had the whole Marxist movement because there was a massive segregation between upper and lower class.
Yeah, when it comes to like...
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. When it comes to identity politics, I find myself more identically aligned with conservatives. Discounting whatever race or sexual orientation they might be, I find more identityship with people of the same beliefs as me than with people of the same race or sexual orientation or whatnot. I mean, even then with people having the same beliefs, I would not follow lockstep with the if with a conservative if they are like a really inarticulate or really foolish individual, like say Rush Limbaugh, for example.
Okay.
S-Man
So
speaks.
I think we've covered this section. Oh yeah, you can say comment on the chat section, but I just want to say I think we've covered this one pretty thoroughly. Unless BTK wants to add anything.
No, I'm good. You got it.
Oh, S-Man Speaks had a question. Like he says, there is LGBT nationalism. Thoughts? He asks all three of us.
Okay.
Well, he does not specify that question towards BTK, but whatever. My thoughts.
I'm not for out. That would be like a civic nationalism where the common thread is being LGBT. And let's be serious. You're not gonna maintain a generational. There's no generational future in an LGBT civic national state. Where's the reproduction?
It lasts one generation.
That's a
we
good
finally
point.
got our own
No matter how
nation,
much
and then
they-
1 year later,
No matter
there's
how much they hate straight people,
yeah,
they
or
need
one
straight people to have
generation.
gay kids. Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, they're also extremely. Sorry, I was gonna say they also seem extremely divided in the way they view themselves within the LGBT community, because you have people that are just, physically. They have some non-standard development within themselves. So there's the physical aspect of, which is actually a very small minority of the entire LGBT community. Those that have something that would be considered non-normal within their physical growth or development. Then you have those that are actually, a legitimate gay person or lesbian, with same thing, where they are legitimately attracted to the opposite sex. They have no desire for the same sex. They have no desire for the opposite sex. But just from what I have personally viewed, it seems there's kind of a trending rush about being part of that community. And I think a large portion of those that would consider themselves included are just there because of the fun and, the kind of being on the outskirts of society. They like to be in that area. They like to be the...
Yeah, they call those, well, at least in the
Point.
trans area, they call those transgenders or trans cultists.
Yeah, it's a bit like the
so
Hot
how can
Topic
that be
community,
actual
right?
How could that be related to any sort of actual nationalism? Because as soon as it's no longer trendy, they're out. They're
Yeah.
done with it.
Well,
they go back to
it's-
whatever
it's-
normal life
once
they
you-
would
once
have
you-
done.
Once you've had the niblets cut off, you can't really go back.
No, but I think he's
Yeah.
talking about the trendy thing where they're like, oh yeah, rebel against authority, the system's fighting us down, we're the outsiders, we don't fit in, we're not normal. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm
Like
an
the whole group of
individual, just like
non-gendered people
everybody else in this group.
So I'm not talking about actual people that have transitioned, transvestites and stuff. I'm talking about like the non-gender, odd-looking group of people that want to dye their hair weird colors and say, hey, look, I've got boy jeans on, so that makes me non-gender.
Oh, did you
Even though you're obviously a girl with
Did
tits.
you see the video that was trending yesterday?
The ones that
talking
won't
about
actually
people that
ever
want-
transition, they just want to be part of that unique.
Yeah, they're people that want all the benefits of both genders and the stigmatisms of neither. They're freaking, they're nothing but a cop out. They're fucking fake.
Yeah.
Correct, and that has actually grown the LGBT community because they are now lumped in with those who are truly in the LGBT community. So that group seems as large as it does is because there is such a mass population of those trenders or cop outs, as you said, that are now included within that group. But if it ever turned into some sort of like civic nationalism where they were to separate themselves into their own entity and govern themselves, eventually they would be tired of it. They're done with it, and they'll carry on with the normal life because party's over, time to go home.
That's a great segue into showing how ridiculous Richard Spencer's ethno state of if you're white, you're right, come on in. just because somebody's in the LGBT community now, which would be the equivalent of being white, doesn't mean they have the same ideology as the rest of them. Doesn't mean that they're going to want to always stay in that community.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people's ideas, values, morals, things can shift over time depending on their life experience. So,
Yeah.
nothing to do with any of that.
Okay, so I think we're
I'm
gonna
just
keep on going with
gonna-
the video if you guys are okay with
Yeah,
that.
I'm just gonna sum up that LGBT nationalism. If there was nothing but LGBT people in a country, I mean, you would have the bi men making out with the bi women and making little bi babies. But aside from that, the birth rate would drastically drop and the country wouldn't be able to sustain itself.
Well, if you listen to Riley J. Dumbass, anybody in the LGBT community has to have sex with the trans people. Like, otherwise they're being transphobic, so.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah, discriminatory.
Yeah, fuck
so then there would be an outcry of the Me Too movement within the within the LGBT nation. Well, I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. All right, let's keep going.
Political state right now in the States right now, everything's really heated. Do you really think most people would leave peacefully, especially seeing how just people get heated over politics as it is right now? Like Trump, for example?
I recognize the degree to which my concept of an ethno-state is way out in front. It's on the crest of the wave. It's way out in front. Is this politically possible right this instance? Absolutely not. Is this going to happen next election cycle? No. This is something that we have to be thinking about teleologically in the sense of an ultimate goal that is possible and that we want to channel our energies towards. It is an ideal in that sense. So in the sense of, look, can people be enticed to leave? Yes, absolutely. Recent immigrants can be paid, given cash handouts to return to their countries. Could we, through imperialism, create new ethno-states for people? Could we therefore create an African-American homeland that would actually have sovereignty? It's kind of similar, although different and fundamentally different than the reservation system of creating homelands for the American Indians.
That's the real.
Yeah, that's why I put that clip in there, and I can't believe nobody called him on that. He just advocated for imperialism and the same system that we use to drive out the Native Americans. Like, oh yeah, Trail of Tears went really well for American history, right? The whole reservation, that a lot of people look back and like, oh yeah, the Indian reservation system, that's a thumbs up for America. That's like the biggest blight on our entire history as a country is our treatment of the Native American population and our moving them around to different reservations. And the Trail of Tears is like that's right up there with slavery, as in, oh yeah, that's pretty bad. We shouldn't have done that.
So now I'm all for Richard Spencer and his ethno-state. All he needs to do is invest in a couple geobiodomes, assemble them in Antarctica, and he can move on the fuck down there and have his ethno-state.
Well, so one thing that I heard Warski kind of bring up, and it sounds like everybody else is assuming this, but it was never actually, I don't know if Spencer ever actually clarified this. So because everybody in this discussion is primarily U.S. based, they're assuming this would be an ethno-state built upon the United States and drive everybody else out, which may not necessarily be the case.
Wait a minute.
Would, if he was to settle on a specific place for an ethno-state, would there be a better place other than the United States, seeing as, you know, I don't remember the exact proportion of the population. I think it's now like 65% is white, and the other 35 is whatever other nationalities. That's a large portion. That's almost that is a third of the population to drive out.
Oh, hang on a second.
To create an ethno-state here. Is there somewhere else that would actually suit?
Wait, I mean, U.S. based. That's only Richard Spencer and Styx, though, right? I mean, Sargon is British. Andy is a Canadian, and isn't Jean? Doesn't he like live in France or something?
Nah, JF is Canadian.
I think he's Canadian.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
French Canadian.
Okay. Well, yeah, still.
Well, I meant
the majority of them are
Andy's not
not U.S.
alt-right.
based.
Andy's not pushing for an ethno state.
No. I did not think that Andy is for an ethno state himself, but he's really trying to milk off of this white ethno statism cash cow.
My
Well, yeah,
point
he
wasn't
finds it
necessarily.
hilarious, and if he can make money off it, why not?
Yeah, my initial point wasn't necessarily their country of origin. It's their focus seems to imply everyone is assuming the ethno state would be built here in the United States or on top of it and drive everybody else out. Whereas I don't think Richard Spencer ever really specifically stated that. But if someone were to try and build a white ethno state, is there a better place than the United States to start? Like maybe Canada?
Richard Spencer's more along the lines of he wants to set a part of the U.S. and like move them there and then disown it. Is basically how he outlines it.
So move all the darkies to California and then have them secede from the Union.
Well, you can't do that because the whole reason why we had Manifest Destiny was so that we could have border security, coastal security on both coasts. So they'd have to move them up to like Maine, New Hampshire, and then just draw the line that goes across between the U.S. and Canada. Just make it go straight across, like it should, and they can have that part up there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with that.
I
So
would
right
say
now
move
we've
them up
got.
to Alaska, but
We might need those resources someday.
exactly.
But if you look at the United States as it currently is, there's not so much of an immigration issue with Canada. We all get along fine, but we've got a mass immigration issue with Mexico because the border extends across the entire southern U.S., from California all the way to the other side of Texas. So if we were to say separate this country or split it into divisions, we have giant land partitions that can't necessarily be enforced, which I'm wondering how this would even survive. The only way I could see is a purely ethno state surviving for any amount of time would be to separate yourself via land, like maybe everybody moving back to Europe, pass between Russia and the rest of Western Europe as a cutoff, and that's easier to defend.
Yeah, but that won't work because you can't grow enough crops to support another 300 million people moved over there at once. What we should do is we should just line up on the border, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, which is what I tend to do on this stream. Just line up on the border, shoulder to shoulder, push all the way down to the Panama Canal, and now you have an easily defensible southern border.
We could probably do that now without the white ethno state. Assimilate Mexico and say, hey, everybody straighten up, get rid of the drug cartels. Now you're going to act American. And
no. You make them all walk in front of you as you come across them, and then they either swim to the other side of the canal or they drown. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And
I'm back. Sorry about that delay.
Oh damn, he's back. I gotta stop.
You gotta stop what?
What?
So we were just kind of discussing. My initial question was, everyone is assuming this ethno state will be built on the United States.
Well, that's what Richard Spencer is advocating for. They talked about that a little bit.
I didn't hear him necessarily point that out.
Not in this clip. He pointed that out earlier on because he was saying, "Oh, the U.S. used to be an ethno state," or he was saying he said actually that the U.S. is an ethno state.
But then we got on the discussion of his overall plan would be to zone out certain areas as for the other cities, push them outside of this ethno state area.
Yeah,
but then we were in discussion
suggested.
Of how do you protect that ethno state? Because even with the current U.S., we're having trouble with our southern border as is.
And I made my normal
so we were kind
argument
of jokingly
of
talking about
push to the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just wondering
how he would even enforce an ethno state if it's not completely locked in geographically. He'd have to have an area that can be defended on all sides easily in order to prevent mass immigration issues.
Yeah, well, he's talked about...
If he wanted to preserve an ethno state.
He's talked in the past on Roaming Millennial stream where he's saying he doesn't really have a definite plan for this, but he's saying maybe we could section off Florida and then move all of the other ethnicities into Florida, and now that's their area and that's their. And I'm like, that kind of defeats the purpose, like, because I mean that just creates now there's 2 areas that are trying to cross the border into the United States.
Well, no, it'd be a lot cheaper to build a wall
over Florida, yeah,
to separate Florida.
But
Yeah,
you'd still have the
then-
same
then
problem.
they'd be coming in by boats up the coast.
Oh,
or
hey, we built this
westward.
wall. Oh, yeah,
towards
you mean that wall
Mississippi.
that I can take here? I could just swim around this little.
Ah,
No,
put in
no, no.
some,
They,
put in
they,
some
would
sea
they would
mines.
create a giant biodome around Florida.
Yeah.
See, now that would work for. The only reason why I said biodome earlier is that would work. You'd
For
have to do
Antarctica.
that for like Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just
Florida, I mean, I guess
a
the
dome
Coast
of
Guard
some
would have a
kind.
job.
Well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
But the
I know
Coast
you
Guard
guys were
on either
kind of
side
joking
of the
about the Mexico thing, and I think we've talked about this on this stream. So I think that was actually back in the day. The U.S. should have just kept pushing down and gone all the way, but since we didn't, I still don't have any problem with the U.S. saying, "Hey, Mexico, if you want help, we will actually make you a part of the United States, and then we will go in and militarily take over and stop all these cartels and whatnot." As soon as we'll declare Mexico as like a state of emergency, martial law, have the National Guard and our military go in, clean out all the drug dealers, push all the way to the Panama Canal. Hey, it's now all of ours. That seems kind of.
Well,
Yeah,
all
this
we gotta do is
contrary
what we
to-
did to
about 2
Mexico
months.
back in the day. But we gotta do it. We just gotta do what we did to Mexico back in the day. All right, invite them into a huge trade deal, bankrupt their government, and then they'll sell us the land like they did in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
that
little
we could've-
unethical,
we-
but
going towards the end of the Mexican-American War, we could have plausibly just kept all of Mexico.
yeah, it would be a
I mean,
little
we had
unethical
conquered the
in
capital
its
at that point.
in the way of doing it. But I think overall, once the dust settles, everybody who is currently a Mexican citizen, even if they were just like even if Mexico was just considered a territory similar to Guam and Puerto Rico, the people there would be so much better off than they are currently if that were to happen. So
But
It may be a
if
case
you
of
make
the-
them a territory like Guam, we're gonna have people like that one senator from Georgia, and he's gonna get on the Congress floor and express that he's worried about Mexico capsizing due to the amount of people in it.
Johnson, by the way.
Dude,
That was Hank Johnson.
That
That's
was
fucking
an amazing
hilarious.
clip. It's gonna capsize. All right, okay. So but I did want to. We didn't really cover it too much. Was he was advocating for imperialism, and he was saying. So now he's saying, oh yeah, the U.S. should just kind of take on this imperialistic, nation building stance, and we're gonna kick out these ethnicities, and when we need someplace to go, let's just go take over other countries and then give them to these.
There's where
ethnicities.
the violence comes in. I mean, earlier Andy was asking him, how would we attain your ethno-state? I mean, would we attain it through violent means? And Richard Spencer was just like dancing around that question saying, well, obviously there are peaceful methods. But he just kind of answered the question for us by saying imperialism might be the answer because, well, yeah, you go on a
Like,
conquest,
well.
there's obviously going to be violence.
But
So
it's not
yeah,
really
thank you.
There's no
because-
peaceful imperialism, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, it wouldn't really be imperialism because imperialism suggests that you take over.
And you
You
keep
make
it.
an empire. You take over an area and you keep it. He doesn't want to keep it. He wants to take it over, kick everybody
Well-
that he doesn't like out of here to there, and then say, "Have a good day."
Well, he's essentially
Well, then I
going to
guess
have
he
to
was kind
for his country or his idea to work. He's essentially going to have to maintain control of it, and then in order to keep the people from leaving that area.
Only if it borders us. If it doesn't border
guess
us,
he
you don't
could've-
have to worry about it.
Well,
I
because
guess
then
Spencer
how
might
is
have
it?
used the wrong terminology for his own ideology or something because he definitely did use the word imperialism
Yeah.
a little earlier.
Well, if it's the case where he's just saying, "Hey, you have to leave this country, and then we'll make this homeland for you, and we took it over, and here you go," and then you leave it alone. nothing is stopping those people from leapfrogging back into the U.S. Like, oh, hey, I'm not from that other country. I'm from England. So they just, hey, I'm just going to take a flight to England. I'm a UK citizen. All right, I'm going to America because they accept UK citizens. It creates all kinds of problems.
On Spencer's behalf, he actually, in my opinion, was correct on that statement. The only way to get his ethno-state is through a form of imperialism.
Which...
Except for you abandon the area that you conquered once you've moved everybody to it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have to worry about them coming back, because say you kick every black person out, okay? 10 years down the road, you see a black person in your neighborhood, they're not supposed to be there, you shoot them. Problem solved.
Yeah, well, the problem is you have to get to that point, which, if you've got this kind of leapfrogging system going on, it's going to be like the case what we have right now with the illegal immigration.
I'm not advocating for shooting black people.
No,
we would have to degenerate to about 150 years ago, where white people thought the black race was subhuman.
Yeah.
And they would have to treat all other races as subhuman in order to have the mental fortitude to just shoot people on sight because you're in my country. Okay. So we would have to pretty much de-evolve back about 150 years as far as the way we view society and we view humankind and our biological research and understanding of the way humans are. All of that would have to be wiped away in order to preserve that sort of ethno-state.
Now, if he was going for, instead of an ethno-state, if he was going for an ideological state where, say everybody that's a libertarian that believes in free, equal values and all that good shit, they're welcome here, and as soon as you start spouting commie shit, you get the fuck out. Okay, I'm for that.
Yeah, that's civic nationalism.
Racial is a lot different.
Yeah, that's civic nationalism, and I support civic nationalism because that.
But on the counterpoint to that civic nationalism, that's actually what the U.S. started as. Over time, it will be integrated with other thoughts and ideas.
And they do get into that later in the video. So
liberalism.
Yeah, hold your thoughts on that. They do discuss this later in these clips that I've got up here. So for the sake of time, let's keep going.
Problem, it's really probable that none of this will go the way you think it will go. Really probable. In fact, it's really probable that this will completely collapse before you even finish what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Even Hitler himself, if you'll probably understand this, referred to the idea of an eternal camp for an eternal struggle. So even if you were to achieve white imperialistic ethno-state, carve the world up in such a way, you wouldn't have stability. So you just end up going through the whole friggin' thing again. So.
Well, I do agree.
You know, in many
that
ways, you sound like a right-wing version of Peter Kropotkin. You sound like you've got this utopia.
Right, so before he gets into Kropotkin, I'm gonna take a little pause break there for a few seconds because it's cycling back to what he was referring to earlier in that. So, in order to maintain this, you're going to have to keep doing this, either like rinse and repeat. Like, okay, now it's stopped being an ethno-state. Now we've got to segregate again, and then wait, and over time it's going to go back, so it's either going to be an ongoing war of keeping everybody out and keeping everybody segregated, or you're going to have people naturally moving and migrating, and then you have to keep resegregating over time.
Once it's segregated, how will it become desegregated? You segregate, then you close the borders.
Yeah, they're going to have to maintain.
Anybody that's the wrong color doesn't get the passport to enter.
So it's either going to be an ongoing enforced segregation, or if they ever start to stop segregating by force, then they're gonna naturally migrate and move in together, and then you'll have to force massive forced segregation. So it's either it's an eternal process of making sure that the country is segregated, or it is a massive fluctuations of people moving in slowly over time, and then you gotta mass force everybody out. It's either a continual process, or it's
nobody would
burst,
be able to move
boom
in,
and bust.
Nobody would be able to move in. You're creating a problem that would not exist.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a continual cycle of making sure no one gets in.
It's not even. It's just you pass a law that no black people can enter the country, no brown people can.
Yeah, and then you have to do that. You have to do that border enforcement, which is really difficult to do. when you're saying when you're
No, like I said, if they're the wrong color, you shoot them. It's really easy.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds
either
harsh, but it's really easy.
either there is going to be violence or eventual mixing of colors. Either way, Richard Spencer loses.
yeah, it's okay.
I'm all for Richard Spencer losing. I mean,
Okay.
he's got good ideas for 300 years ago.
All right, let's keep going.
Dream that you want to achieve without any violence, but you are aware that there are probably going to be other political actors within your movement, like, I don't know, the sort of Daily Stormer types, who are more than happy to use violence. Who's putting a bullet in the back of who at that point?
There are going to be competing visions of who will rule the planet after the...
Okay, yeah, that was a little bit of a cut on my end, but I just want to clarify that in the actual stream, he never answers Sargon's point there. He starts talking about all these other, and I'm like, you didn't answer the question, because the question is basically, yes, you may not want things to happen violent. You may be one of the good ones, but someone is going to want to do this violently. And
Yeah,
they're
you should
going
have played
to...
that bit of the clip just so that we could all laugh at
No,
his
no, no.
stupidity.
No, that was Sargon's question, right? That's what Sargon's question was basically, is someone's going to want to be malicious in this, and they're going to say, oh, you're not doing it fast enough, or you're not doing it the right way, and they're going to want to end
Right.
Spencer and take over and then do it forcefully. But he never
I thought
actually
you was
answers that.
referring-
But it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
30
yeah.
minutes of him answering that, and there's just 30 minutes back and forths, and I'm like, dude, that's way too freaking long, and he never actually answers the question.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think Sargon
yeah,
asked
like
that
a-
same
like a-
question to Mark Totes, whatever his name is, on the Baked Alaska stream the other day.
Hmm.
And I think that guy did answer it, if I remember right.
Okay, so...
the fall
No, it
of
was-
American
it wasn't-
unipolar, the American unipolar world. And what I am saying is that we need our vision. That those who have a passion and a will to implement a vision are going to be the winners in this. If we decide to all be individualistic liberals and say, oh, we don't want to play that game, we're so afraid of the state, we're so afraid of violence that we don't want to play that game, those people will ultimately be slaves. Those people will ultimately be subjugated to those who are willing to use the state,
Pause.
willing to use force.
Yeah, I think...
So afraid of violence? What the fuck? He acts like that's an unnatural thing. Nobody wants to get violent.
He must have missed the entire American Revolution because they were
Yeah.
very much liberalist, and we kicked the shit out of Britain and made our own country, and we're still here.
Right. I mean, obviously, violence is going to happen in some circumstance, like for
Yeah.
the preservation of freedom, for example. But what the fuck? He goes acting like this liberal fear of violence. Like, he acts like that's unnatural. Like, what the fuck?
Well, it
Not a
also,
fear of
the
violence.
thing that he's
Liberals
actually
understand
arguing
the-
for...
the value of
Yeah.
I was gonna say, liberals understand the value of human life, so they
Mhm.
choose not to engage in violent activity.
it's a
unless
last
it's
resort.
necessary.
Yeah, it's a last
But
resort.
then they will fight with their life to preserve their belief, which is why they're liberalists.
Yeah. So the thing that, I was listening to this and I had to re-listen to it like a couple times. I'm like, wait a minute, is he seriously advocating that might makes right? That's what his argument boils down to right now. He's saying, well, if you don't, there's people with ideologies and they'll take over, and so that's why you have to have your own ideology in control. And you're like, wait a minute. And yeah, and if you don't want to enforce your authoritarian regime, someone else is going to enforce their authoritarian regime. And I'm like, you're just arguing that, totalitarian governments is the only way to run a society. And if you're not a participant in one of those, then, well, you have no choice of you have no chance of winning. Like,
Totalitarianism is certainly the only way to sustain his white ethno-state.
yeah.
Well, he's also right in principle, because once a republic fails, it inevitably becomes
Yes.
totalitarianism.
But
So he's right in principle, but the republic hasn't fallen yet, so
Yeah,
it
hasn't-
doesn't matter.
and it's lasted a good deal longer than others than other republics that followed along the same lines. I mean, we've actually had a pretty good run as the U.S. As far as when when we started to actually erode, and we still have a chance to recover and right the ship, which I think Donald Trump is kind of doing right now. So, cross my fingers, hoping that it's enough. It might be too late, but I still think that there's hope.
What he's advocating for is a very thin line and a straight path to exactly what Hitler did. And so he's wanting to separate a white ethno-state right now based off of this idea that white people as a race have the same sort of morals, values, background, and are spiritually connected.
Yeah, he talks about that
which
later.
He said a couple times during the stream. However, once this starts to lean more towards a totalitarian takeover or government entity, all of that will be wiped aside, and it will come down to just, are you white or not? And it will then become a purge and no longer matters about values or morals or the reason that he's asking for this in the first place. His ideology will be wiped out.
Yeah, and he won't be the one making the rules.
Strictly, what is the color of your skin? Let's get rid of anybody who is not this supreme Aryan race, which is the exact damn thing that Hitler did that the world detests. That's exactly
and even if Spencer doesn't end up being the literally Hitler 2.0, someone else will.
Somebody behind him, yes, the more aggressive is going to happen. The one who's willing to take up the government and the arms and enforce that.
Because that's exactly what he's advocating for right now, right? When he's saying somebody who has the will and the passion to do this will take over, and then you're going to be subject to their will. And I'm like, if that's and if you are advocating for peace, then you're not that someone who is passionate and will and doesn't have the, you aren't that person, Richard. If you're not willing to get violent, the person who is willing to get violent is the more extreme, the more passionate, the more willful one. And they're going to win. They're going to get lead.
Spencer is the Vladimir Lenin before the Joseph Stalin to come. And, you go mentioning about collectivism, Sinister, of how Richard thinks that white people are all the same minded and we're all spiritually aligned with each other. Like, makes me think a lot of the Borg from Star Trek. Like, we are the alt-right. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. And Richard Spencer is the fucking Borg queen.
Hey, HUMANE,
more than one way.
Do a Google search
and
real quick.
Loudmouth just joined us. Welcome, Loudmouth.
I sure did.
Is my mic on? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you were talking. Yeah. What were you saying?
Do a Google search real quick for Atomwaffen. One word. Atomwaff. What the hell is it? Hang on.
Still on that.
Atom.
Yeah, this is the last week of this.
You're still doing that damn Spencer stream?
Yeah. This is the fourth and final week.
Okay.
Nothing like a bunch of loudmouths on the internet in a hangout, but then we get the ultimate loudmouth on the internet with an opinion joining us today.
Yes.
Based in the United States.
Yeah, they're based out of Florida. If you go to their website and go to their propaganda page and just look at the propaganda that they've made.
Yeah, those are the types of people who would be pushed to the forefront in Richard Spencer's ideology. That's exactly...
These guys hate the alt-right because they straight up say that if you, on one of their parts of their website, they straight up say that the alt-right is not radical enough.
Oh, boy.
They're too weak.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what those types of people view. If you try a peaceful takeover, there's going to be the militant type that say you are too weak.
And
what
Richard Spencer's,
these guys are.
What he's advocating for right now paves the way for the militant. He's like saying, hey, all of these things that I'm advocating that everybody allows to take over or demands to be the people in charge, everything that I'm asking for, that's going to be the violent people. Richard Spencer's, what's the word? He's making the fallacy of thinking that, yes, I'm advocating for all of these principles, and that's going to be me that's leading it, and I want peace, and so therefore it's going to be peaceful. And you're like, but by those same arguments, the more violent people should be higher up on the tier than you.
One of their propaganda art says, support your local drug dealer for population control.
Terrible, man. Okay.
You know, if Richard Spencer is the milk toast of the far right, well then this is scary. Real scary.
All right, let's keep going.
And who have a bold vision of the future and the will to enact it.
Yeah.
Right, so you're willing to
Bold
use the state,
vision
you're
of the
willing to use
future,
force,
like
and you're pretty sure you're going to
eliminating
get shot
people
in the back
violently.
by one of your more violent comrades.
If you simply don't want to play this game in favor of liberalism or individualism, all that means is that you are going to be someone else's subject.
It really like
that the people who are willing to
basically
act
bashing
collectively,
individualism right there.
who have boldness and a vision, are going to ultimately win. This is a Machiavellian point in the sense that one must
Okay.
be a little bit evil in order to combat evil.
People aren't.
Okay, I gotta pause it there. Oh, that's terrible. Gotta be a little bit evil to combat evil. That's-
Well, where does the saying necessary evil come in from? I mean, just to play devil's advocate here.
yeah, it's. But I don't agree with the necessary evil because
It actually comes from Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the origin
saying
of it.
existed long before Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, come on.
Can you
You
necessary
don't remember
evil-
reading the ancient scrolls that had Batman's battle with Bane on it? That predates Beowulf.
Yeah. Okay.
Bane.
Scrolls had
I don't
Batman
wanna-
battle with Bane on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, can you toss me a wrench real quick so I can, or I
Oh.
guess you could do it. Link that Adam off in the chat so that
Let's
they
see.
can see exactly how bad Richard Spencer's ideology will, the bad place it will lead us to.
How do I do that exactly? Give you a wrench.
Only then will you have my permission to die.
All right, so I just put an F in the chat. If you click on the three dots
Okay,
next
there you
to
go,
my
yeah.
name, you can add moderator.
Yeah. All right, there you go. You got yourself a wrench. Don't use it to break everything.
That's kind of a horrible mentality, viewing things as a necessary evil. So, just from personal perspective, being a libertarian, you know, I believe in individualism. People do what they want with their life, and they're allowed to pursue their happiness, their goals, their dreams. A necessary evil would be if I have an intruder that is coming onto my property, into my house, and pointing a gun at me or my family. A necessary evil would be to end their life, or I risk my life being over, my children.
Yeah.
This happens to
but
be in the vicinity.
Because
That's a
of that.
necessary evil, because they are taking an evil action.
Yeah. But I would say
Necessarily
because
means-
that is a justified use of force, it's no longer evil. That's the necessary evil still implies that you did something that was immoral or something that was untowards and that should not be used.
Just forcefully wiping out a peaceful group of people
Yes.
because you want them out of your ethno state.
Yeah.
So now
That's-
you're ending lives that did not ask for it and did not intrude on your space and didn't offend you or pose a threat to you in your existence. You're just ending their existence because of your ideology.
Yeah.
But if he's a proponent of that, again, that's a very direct path to
Either Nazism
totalitarian
or communism.
genocide.
Like, yeah, because, I mean, genocides happened under both of those types of structures, but that's exactly like, oh, it's a necessary evil. Well, that's what the communists thought they were doing when they
So
instituted
necessary evil
Gulag.
is extremely subjective, not objective, meaning the bigger nut, the bigger, craziest person with a lot of charisma is the one that's going to ultimately be on top and lead to a massacre.
Yeah.
You cannot just force people to separate or change the way they live or believe because you have your ideology and just assume everybody else thinks like that.
Yeah, and sacrificing the bourgeoisie for the good of the proletariat, that's a necessary evil to the communists. And sacrificing or, killing Jews and people in concentration camps, that's a necessary evil for the, for the Austrian race in under Nazism. It's a necessary evil, and you're like, I don't think there is any such thing as a necessary evil that can, because if it can be justified, then it is no longer evil. Like, so when Sinister was talking about, somebody's invading your house and you're protecting yourself and your family, killing that intruder to save a life is not in and of itself evil. Now, if you're just killing that intruder with no threat to your family and your life, then it is evil. So, but, I guess that comes into the more of the morality question, and because like how much can you justify that? Because at what point in the intrusion does it become justified? Is it when they're at the door, checking, peeping through the window? Or is it when they actually break glass? Or if they if they break into your house and they don't have a weapon on them? That gets a little... Because if you take this to the extreme... Or if you
find out that they had a weapon and they pull it on you, but it's an airsoft gun and you didn't know it, so you shoot them, now are you the bad guy because they didn't actually pose a threat?
Yeah, I would say any time they enter your house, that's where I draw the line. It's like, okay, yeah, you peep outside the window, I don't have the right to shoot you. If you get into my house, I don't care if you're unarmed or not.
Anyways, that's why I brought that up as necessary evil, because I would consider evil just ending somebody's life. I see no reason to end somebody's life unless it comes down to those specific circumstances where my own life or the lives of my family are in jeopardy because of this person. Then I would have to take that action to end their life, but I still don't view it as a good thing.
Yeah. But a lot of really, really heinous and evil actions have been done in the name of, a necessary evil.
Well, the road to hell is paved in good intentions.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Broken up by things like that within the context of a civic structure, and they feel racially homogenous. Wouldn't a person simply, in order to abuse that population, simply happen to be well-spoken and a member of that race? Others will care. The problem is that those people, if they manage to seize power, which will happen within a civic structure from time to time, it has throughout human history, they can then exploit that for their own gain. It's the fact is power corrupts. Sure. It's not going to stop corrupting because it's a white person governing other white people. So if you had a libertarian identitarian state, maybe you could survive that fact. But there's always still going to be that tendency
same thing
towards growth of government.
Now, my challenge to Sargon and Styx is the critique that you make of Richard's racial views to say, well, okay, you want an ethno-state, it's going to lead to people eventually stabbing you in the back. Can't the same critique be given to the current state of Western societies? Can't the same critique be given to multiculturalism? Maybe, Sargon, one day you'll get Muslims stabbing you in the back, don't you think?
Yeah, but it'll never be sanctioned by the state.
There are
you were talking about the future saying...
Okay, I'm going to...
I think that's a little bit of a good question. I mean, the question, it kind of begs the question then of the method of government for Richard Spencer to implement his ethno-state and his ideology. Like, would there be checks and balances in that said government? Because if there are no checks and balances, if it's a 100% dictatorship or something like that, well then... that's when that you are concerned about the next person inheriting power and being violent. But if there are checks and balances, like say he has to get through a couple houses of Congress, get through judges and whatnot, in order to get his ethno-state in place, well then it's a little bit of a less concern for if like somebody after him comes that is more violent.
Yeah, well, he actually addresses that a little later on, so that's why I was trying to get the clip to run, but it had already been a little bit over a minute, so I was going to take a break to see if you guys wanted to comment. He addresses that, and it's the exact opposite answer that I would expect somebody like that to... I mean, it's the exact answer I would expect him to say, but it's the exact opposite answer of someone I would expect to say that was actually trying to solve something. Which he claims that he's trying to solve a problem, but he's doing it in a way that's not going to fix anything. And it kind of explains a little bit why he thinks that it's not going to, or his solution is going to fix things, and why another solution won't. So I guess we'll just keep going.
I'd probably have something really intelligent to add, but I'm so distracted by Dark Khan's pop filter right now that I can't get my eyes off of it.
It is. Yeah.
What are you imagining? That's a big dick or something?
Well, it's got Haynes at the bottom. It's.
I knew what it was immediately. It's just like, wow, I never thought of that. Yeah. It's like free advertising for Heinz.
Heinz.
Oh,
Haynes.
Evil product placement.
Hey, you know what? Well, at least he didn't use underwear.
Fruit of the loom.
All right.
So one point I wanted to
inherently pure.
Sorry.
I wanted to bring up one point that I reading here. He brought up multiculturalism as a counterpoint to having an ethno state, and how that is now starting to dissolve within the United States and stab us in the back, so to speak. But I think what he's conflating here is there's actually two types of multiculturalism. There's like integrated multiculturalism, where that's what the United States is. It's the melting pot. You're Italian, you want to go have spaghetti at home, you want to open up an Italian restaurant, by all means do it. But before that, you're a United States citizen. You live here. You belong to the U.S., not Italy. And so anybody that moves in needs to integrate into the lifestyle and the general nationalism and feeling of belonging to the United States to be an actual citizen. That would be integrated multiculturalism. What we're seeing as of late is where there's cultural appropriation, so everyone seems to be segregating now, and you're not allowed to wear this African-looking hoodie or this Jamaican whatever if you happen to be a Reaper, or you can't listen to rap because you're white, and you can't do this because you're this race.
You're not allowed to wear a Black Panther. You're not allowed to wear a Black Panther costume if you're white.
I got a great quote.
So rather than focus on the nationalism part, they're focusing on where they came from, as if this is just an empty dumping ground for anybody that came from another country, but you still separate yourselves into individual tiny segments of your country and maintain that instead of integrating into the United States.
I have a great quote here. Is my mic still on, or did I unmute myself?
Yeah, you're.
No, you're on.
The quote is, "Any man who says he is American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is the loyalty to the American people." President Theodore Roosevelt.
Yep. That's when he was talking about hyphenated Americans, right?
Correct. So when he's talking about the Muslim immigration crisis, if they were actually integrated multiculturalism, they could still be Muslim, and that's fine. But they would come in and not harm fellow citizens of the United States because they are citizens of the United States. They can still practice their religious beliefs. They can still believe what they want, but you don't hurt other people of your own damn country because you're all U.S. citizens. That's the way it should be working. But as of late, it's not handled that way.
Yeah,
they're not Muslim American. They're an American that happens to be Muslim.
Yes.
They're not an African American. They're an American that happens to be black. I'm not a transgender veteran. I'm a veteran that happens to be transgender.
Yeah,
right?
it's the which one comes first.
I wasn't a tranny in the military. I was just in the military. The fact that I'm a tranny now has absolutely no bearing upon that. So I'm not a transgender veteran. I'm a veteran that happens to be transgender. Yeah. I'm not a white American. I'm an American that happens to be white. Same principle across the board.
Yes.
Out of curiosity, are you a from male to female transgender?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that I wasn't getting it like in reverse.
Ah, you're good.
All right.
It doesn't bother me anyway.
Well, if you got something to say, you were quiet the past few minutes.
Yeah, but final point on that.
If you saw my face picture, you'd be like, "Holy shit, you're hot." Then you see my body picture, you're like, "Oh my god, you're Stone Cold Steve Austin." So.
Yeah. So my final point, or reason I brought that up with the multiculturalism is Spencer's counterpoint is actually a counterpoint to himself, because what he's describing as multiculturalism is the separation of our U.S. culture based off of race, which is what he's advocating for, and that is what's causing the breakdown of U.S. society.
Yeah, well,
he does that a lot. Integrated multiculturalism, where people become U.S. citizens, that has bound us together and made us a great country.
He defeats his own arguments.
It is the exact opposite of what he just said. Yes. So the separation is what's breaking us down, and that's what he's advocating for. So that's why I brought that up. Okay, we can continue unless somebody else has another point.
Did you want to say something? You started to say something. Okay, I'm just gonna keep playing the video.
Loudmouth.
Pretty spiral, and people will say that Richard Spencer's not white.
Of the principles you're laying out, as you have admitted.
There's an ethno state. It's called Robert Mugabe runs one and kicked out the last few white people out and inherited a famine, abusive, and leads to you becoming when you.
Yeah, I just wanted to get his. You can. Styx is still talking, and Richard Spencer kind of says it a little quietly. But yeah, that's an African, an ethno state. Yeah, that's.
Did he really say that? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'll replay that little bit. It's
There's an
I'm
ethno
saying-
state. It's called Robert Mugabe runs one and kicked out the last few white people out and inherited a famine. Abusive and
Africans,
leads to you becoming when you bring.
Yeah, no, that's African state. And he just kind of shrugs his shoulders. You're like, what? You're saying the only reason it happened is that because that was African run. That wasn't, if that was white ethno state, it would have been perfectly fine. But since it's an African one, naturally that's gonna happen. You're like,
If they'd have been white, it would have worked.
so that's his view of white people.
It doesn't sound like.
He keeps...
It doesn't just sound like he's just for ethnostatism for all races. He just flat out believes that white people are superior. And I
no apparent
hate
reason.
to see wording, but he really is the definition of a racist. It seems like.
that's
Get it racist.
Because he's saying that white people just are superior, and he doesn't outright say that, but putting all these things together, you're like, you don't have a good reason as to why white people should get their own ethno state and why that would magically fix all these problems. You're just assuming that, hey, when you're white, you're just better. It's.
I still want him to get his
privilege,
ethno
then.
state. I still want him to get his ethno state because he can't blame black people for white crime if there's no black people.
Yeah.
And he can't blame black people for his ethno state failing because there's not going to be any black people who point the finger at him.
His ethno state's going to fail because he advocates...
Yeah, but I really don't think we should we should fuck up the entire country just so we could say to Richard Spencer, "Told you so."
No, like I said, I want him to take a couple
he could get a
biodomes
state
in Antarctica.
We could give him a single state, like one of the.
I got a question for all
Utah,
you guys.
right?
And this is something I wanted to ask earlier, and I kind of forgot about it. We got sidetracked on something else. What if we actually did that? We can find a place, maybe make an agreement with Canada because they got a lot of land that's not necessarily populated.
But we got
Set
a lot
it
of land
aside.
in the
Say
US.
anybody that wants to be part of the white ethno state, you head up there. You're no longer a U.S. citizen. You're not a Canadian citizen. Get the fuck away from us. We're not trading with you. We're not doing business with you. You're separate. You go
north of Canada.
Goodbye.
Anybody that wants
to
even that might work because up there, even the bears
they'll die out on itself very quickly. While the U.S. just everybody's smart enough and says, "I don't care about a white ethno state. Just stays here."
Especially since he's advocating for universal health care.
Just a voluntary ethno state.
I say that I don't have a problem with it. Just don't fuck with my American culture, and don't. Never mind. I was about to say something crude right there.
That's
Well, that's
fine.
what I'm saying. If we almost like an excommunication type thing, you can go ahead. It's voluntary. Don't force anybody here. There's not going to be any sort of military coup or strong arming people into joining your ethno state. Anybody who volunteers can give up their U.S. citizenry, can give up their Canadian citizenship. They move there, and you're now separate. We're not trading with you. We don't agree with you. We don't like the reason you started. So we're not doing business with you. We have nothing to do with you. We're just not going to attack you because we value human life. But you do your own thing over there, and we'll stay the United States. Canada stays over here, and they'll stay Canada, and we'll see how you guys work out. Once you're done eating yourself and that's wiped out, we'll come and reclaim the land when you're all dead.
Yeah, but that's the problem is because we've discussed this on previous streams that Richard Spencer thinks he's on the right.
That would get rid of a lot of racists and a lot of interracial tension here within the United States.
Yeah, Richard Spencer says he's on the right, and he thinks he may think he's on the right, but he's actually on the left, and that's a pretty big symptom of somebody being on the left. Is they never want to go somewhere else and do their own thing. They always want to change what exists and what works to fit.
Well, they want to bring everybody else along with them.
Yeah, because that's if you think about the founding of the United States. The founding of the United States was like, England wants us to do this. Well, screw England. We're going off and we're going to do our own thing. We're going to go create our own country with hookers and blackjack. Wait, no, forget the country. That's what the United States basically was. It's like, we're going to go build our own religion, or we're going to go to our own place. We're going to practice our religion. We're just going to separate ourselves from you, and we're going to do our own thing. And that's the founding of the United States.
Blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, blackjack and hookers. Actually, that's what Nevada is. That's like everything about Las Vegas is blackjack and hookers.
Everything's better with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah. Well, screw the rest of the United States. We're going over there with blackjack and hookers.
But
Spencer, but the left never wants to move somewhere else and start something new of their own. They always want to change the way everything that is works. It's like, oh, well, this is the way society is. Let's change the rest of society to conform to us. As opposed to, hey, that's the way things are. Well, if that's the way things are here, let's just move somewhere else and start our own thing. Although it's a little bit more difficult to do because there's not a whole new continent to go and make your own.
I mean, it kind of displays the weakness of collectivism. You can't do it by yourself. You need a group, and so you need to persuade a group or forcefully push a group into your ideology and your group think. Because an individualist will say, I don't care what everybody else is doing. I'm going to do me.
Yeah. All right, we're about halfway through.
Let's continue.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Bring it to the level of an actual nation state, which simply has race overlapping. It still is going to suffer from the same excesses, but in implementing it in a state that wasn't already basically an ethno-state to begin with, you're going to get a purge. And it could collapse. Look, communists could take over and force diversity down your throat at the barrel of a gun. You'd be a slave.
I agree.
I agree with that.
There is always...
All right. Yeah, that was just my little... Sorry. Hang on a second. Uh-oh. Did it freeze up on me?
You added in the little Freedom Tunes impersonation of Dave Rubin.
Yeah. Uh-oh. What happened here?
Did you stop the video?
No, it got stuck for a little bit.
Over and force diversity down your throat at the barrel of a gun. You'd be a slave.
I agree.
I agree with that.
There was
always... It got stuck there for a second, so I had to replay that.
The barrel of a gun, like no one in other than anti-discrimination laws, which I actually would agree with him, I oppose for businesses. All right, like in terms of who you associate with and generally have relationships with, you don't have to if you want to only. If you only want to hang out, only want to fuck members of your own race, no one's going to prevent you, No one's going to put a gun to your head and say, no, you got to hang out with these people of a different race. That's not how it works.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is he says he just agreed with Styx, but then he's going to say, but there's some kind of exception that's going to completely negate that he agrees with Styx. Because Styx was just saying, he was pointing out a pretty big flaw in Spencer's ideology. And it's like, well, yeah, you're saying this one thing, but you're paving the way for somebody else with a different ideology to take over and collapse and destroy your ethno-state. And he's like, yeah, I agree with that. And then he's going to try to say something that completely undermines it. Like, I agree with everything you just said, but I don't agree with it because of this. And you're like...
Always that chance of corruption. All I would say is that even in...
It's not a chance, it's inevitability. Look at Sarkeesian leading the feminists or something. It's people who project, they're opportunists. They're attracted to power because they want money and they want cars and sex and all these things. It's a human nature. They're the ones that will inevitably end up in control. Only if you properly constrain the state does that stop being so much of a problem, and it is
I don't think you can properly constrain the state. You can. What are you going to constrain it with a paper document like the Constitution? How?
Yeah, because we did sort of talk about that a little bit earlier. So that's his point. Well, here's the thing: is I actually agree with Spencer on this, in that the Constitution doesn't actually constrain the population. It doesn't actually constrain the United States because people have to adhere to it in order for it to constrain it.
I think he was applying restraint to the government, not to the people regarding the Constitution.
No, that's exactly why he said the Constitution is just a piece of paper. He'll elaborate a little bit more on this. But that's partly why I agree with him, although he goes to the exact opposite direction I would go. So that's part of the reason why I think that a minarchist government is not the best form of government and is not stable. Why I actually advocate for anarcho-capitalism, because I understand...
You think that no government is the best form of government?
Yeah, that no government can be the best form of government. We actually have to have a moral standard that governs society, that just strict adherence to a political structure, that political structure is going to change over time, and eventually it's going to be nothing like what it started off with, which is what I'm seeing about the United States. We started off based on the Constitution, we had the Bill of Rights, and then over time, people started ignoring things about the Constitution. People started overriding it. They started implementing policies that are in direct violation of the Constitution, like the Patriot Act, and which is now the Homeland Security Bill. I forget what's the actual name of it, but it's the Homeland Security Act, I think, is the actual name for it now. But that sort of thing erodes our right to privacy, which is outlined in the Constitution. So those types of rules and laws that are implemented violate the Constitution as it was, and the people who implemented them don't care about the Constitution. So if you don't care about that document, you don't think that document has a significance, or that the logic behind it makes sense, if you don't adhere to that, then it's just a piece of paper to you. And you will do everything and anything to change that piece of paper to be whatever you want. And that's what people have done over time. I mean, it's little by little, they're chipping away at the Constitution, and eventually the Constitution's going to be worth no more than toilet paper, because it's going to be so changed from what its original intent was. So I do agree with him there, but his solution to that, I think, is to the absolute extreme. Is like, okay, well, any government that you get is going to be inherently corrupt, or it's going to corrupt over time, and it's going to fade away. So therefore, we need to institute this pure authoritarian structure now. And you're like, wait a minute. That's like saying it's going to get there eventually. Let's just push it forward. And so then we have this extremely dominating and over-controlling state.
Yeah.
That kind of exacerbates the problem a lot further.
Well, what I can see Sargon and Styx saying is that the more authoritarian something is, the more easily it can be corrupted, because those who are on top, those who lead these type of movements or have these type of ideologies, are there because of the power, are there because of the control. They feel like they should be the ones that manipulate this ideology or push this movement, whatever it is. So they're correct in that assumption, because we've seen that countless times throughout history. That does seem like a natural inevitability, but what Spencer is saying in his rebuttal is, well, it's going to happen. Let's just rush towards the bad end of it. Like the worst part, the part that gets recorded in history, the totalitarian extreme dictatorship, let's just jump to that part because it's going to happen, rather than let's try and delay what seems inevitable, or try and work through issues now that we can look at history and at least prolong the prosperity. And
and that's entirely, like, if you read the Federalist Papers,
let's just jump to the quick dictatorship and genocide of other races because F them.
Yeah,
so he's just wanting to jump to the worst parts of history and saying it's going to happen. Let's just get there now.
Yeah, read the documentation that went around when they're talking about forming the United States to begin with. When they're talking about forming the Continental Congress, and when they're talking about adopting or ratifying the U.S. Constitution, they are talking about these exact issues of, okay, what can we do? We know that this is going to happen, or it's kind of inevitable it's going to happen. How do we delay this for as long as possible? And Jefferson said, was it? Yeah, this is the quote we talked about last week, Loudmouth. You remember it? Like from time to time, the blood of the tree of freedom must be, or tree of liberty must be refreshed by the blood of patriots and tyrants, right?
Where that is, it's manure.
Yeah. So that's why he was saying, okay, we can only delay this so long, but eventually over time, you're going to have another Revolutionary War in order to restore this, and then again, you're going to have to keep it at bay as long as you can. But
Thomas Jefferson actually believed there should be an armed revolt in this country every couple decades.
Well, I think he said, that it was estimated about every 200 years. I don't know about every couple of decades. That would be... That's a little... I think we made a good 200 years without it... At that point, we should have maybe had a revolt. But we're pushing like...
There are a few other little revolts throughout the country's history. There was Shays Rebellion during the Jefferson administration. There was a few slave revolts during that
and
era.
The Civil War
there
was
were
an actual revolt that did not succeed.
Yeah. There are actually quite a few, but they just none of them succeed in taking down the United States.
Which maybe that makes sense why there should be like every couple of decades, because then the United States wouldn't be powerful enough to squell the rebellion. But right now, maybe the United States is too powerful, so an outright civil war would probably not be successful, and would be stuck.
That entirely depends on which side and for what ethics the Civil War started. If they're started for on one side for one reason, you have millions of veterans that are going to take up arms and fight against it. If it started on the other side for other reasons, you have millions of veterans that are going to take up arms and fight for it. So,
yeah. All right, so we are at about 7:30, and we've got a little bit less than halfway to go through. So let's try to speed through a little bit of this.
You constrain it with that, plus a strong civic order, which we had in the United States before Marxists influenced things. But you don't fight them by saying, "Hey, we're going to be white." There are white Marxists.
America's been corrupted as well.
You argue for single payer.
What would you constrain it with? I really want to know. Would you constrain it with men in jack boots with guns? How would you constrain it?
And you argue for things like single payer.
Other than the Constitution, which is what every state has had since the dawn of time. Go on.
Would it constrain what?
You were literally just saying that you can't constrain government power with a piece of paper. You were mocking.
Now, I want to point out that is not a cut. This is literally like, that's how the argument went. There's no break in between. He was just arguing that you cannot constrain a government with paper. And then Sargon and Styx are talking about this, and he's like, wait, constrain what? And I'm like, dude, you were just talking about that 30 seconds ago. How did you not remember that?
Well, I mean, he can't forget things. I was told that Richard Spencer is a genuine, actual smart person.
Yeah, by a credible source.
I kind of want to...
Probably somebody who's a lot dumber than he is.
I think I kind of want to hear the rest of what Sargon was saying.
Okay.
The idea. Okay, how do you do it?
Government power is constrained by, as Styx said, a strong civic order and people who want to push back against government power.
Yeah.
It's ultimately not
constrained. I just want to say that I do agree with Styx and Richard Spencer that it's the civic, which is what the anarcho-capitalists focus on, is that the civic aspect of it will keep the nation in order, but the legal aspect is something that does fluctuate. And as long as you put the legal aspect above the civic, it's going to lead to this corruption and ultimate failure. But let's keep going.
And by the law is an articulation of state power. The law does not constrain the state. So yes, it's basically a civic order of a sense of uprightness and...
The law does not constrain the state. Did you just say
no,
that? No.
Yes, I did.
Okay. It's constrained so long as that legal architecture is supported by the people within that civic state.
Styx, okay. Wow, you're thinking thoughts that you've never thought before.
I hate his smug reply there. That's not something... That is not something Styx has never thought about, because you listen to the certainty in what he's saying. That's a libertarian argument there. That is why we are people who are libertarian, or people who are the extreme form of libertarian, which is ANCAP. We say we want to reduce the power of government because we understand that the government has to be restrained by the civic order.
He also mentions a strong civic society constraining the government. Like, what if the strong civic society wanted to resist against the government in putting this white ethno-state?
Yeah, well,
I mean, what does he think is going to happen? All white people,
problem.
It's someone like spurging out in your chat, HUMANe. I've been reading it. It's kind of funny.
Oh, I've kind of left it to the bottom there. Oh, okay. What is this?
But
broken.
Yeah, but anyway, as I was saying, I mean, what does Richard Spencer think he's going to do? Like, educate the entire civic society, the white civic society, to be resistant against when the government is overreaching? I mean, a lot of white people here in the U.S. think that it would be overreaching if the government was to deport all minority races, including the ones that are naturally born in the United States or naturalized migrants who are legal citizens.
Sorry, I was distracted by the chat there.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't know. He mentioned some point.
Spurging out in your chat.
Yeah, I'm reading through it, but there's a whole lot of nothing. But Spencer openly says the left is right about a lot, you uneducated faggot. I'm like, he doesn't say the left is right about a lot. He says the right is the ones who are collectivists, and he says the leftists are the wrong about everything. But he is on the left. He just doesn't want to admit it, or because maybe he would lose traction with his followers, or because then he'd have to face the facts this is something he mentions later on in this clip that I have, so I'm gonna save that for later. But this point that he's arguing right now, we were saying civic will control the civic dictates what the law. So law is articulating the civic principles. I agree with that. But then he says that civic must constrain the law. But that's the exact opposite of what he is arguing for at the moment. He's arguing for an ethno-state, which is not a civic institution. It is a legal institution. Because people have shown over time that gradually, peacefully, they like to intermingle with each other. They like to form these states where everybody is mixed together. But he is saying that even if people want to do that, the law is going to prevent them from doing it. That's not a civic national order. That is putting the law above the civic. And what he's arguing for right now... what he's arguing for right now is the opposite of what he's been arguing for this entire time. He does this a lot, and people don't call him out on it or don't realize what he's doing. It's maybe because he's kind of long-winded, but...
Oh my god, this guy's like... This guy in the chat, he's like, you're fucking dumb, you read this bitch. I'm willing to bet. I'd bet like $100 this guy subscribed to No Bullshit. Alright? I would bet.
It's just autistic temper tantrum.
Let me actually even go to this. What I find.
Yes, this is stream
Holy
section.
shit! I just looked at his subscriptions. He fucking is.
Subscribe to No BS.
All right, somebody owes me $100.
All right, eventually, I'll put it in your Patreon. Give me a couple of months. All right, let's keep going.
The law is an articulation of power. It's an articulation of the state. It does not constrain the state. Yes. I believe that, so do many other legal theorists you've never read.
The functions of the various institutions of the states to uphold their own rules, laws, and norms. But do you not think that people will do that?
White people are attracted to, for better and for worse, awesome. They're attracted to a sense of uprightness and individualism.
Okay, he's...
Wait a minute, now he's appealing to individualism? Wasn't he just for the entire first half of the stream appealing to collectivism?
I missed that the first time I watched the stream, and I was watching it back through to edit this video.
The idea is collectivism. His whole government is collectivism, and now he's saying white people just naturally have an instinct towards individualism.
Yeah, I know.
And that's what we need to be upholding.
Not Richard, though.
Because collectively, over the course of the last 3 weeks, I've spent about 9 hours debating and going through the stream, talking about how he's advocating for collectivism and how left individuality, and we've been rebutting those points. And now he is arguing for it.
Like all white people. Don't start a statement by saying all white people naturally are individualists.
Well, he's advocating as if individualism is a good thing now. It's like, wait a minute, I just spent 9 hours pointing out how individualism is above collectivism, and in this same stream, you're like, you've been, there's, this is probably about an hour and a half through the actual stream, so he's been arguing for collectivism for about an hour and a half, and now suddenly he's changing his opinion on it. It's
wow.
What?
Somebody should post a video called Richard Spencer contradicts himself.
He does it. That's what that's what these streams have been dedicated to.
It almost seems like his basic view on things is that everything is going to shit, but all the good stuff came from white people. So what we need to do is, as a collective mind, is start this ethno-state, move everybody there, use imperialism to separate everybody else out, and then once we have this set, Then we switched back to liberalism and individualism, but now we had just white people, which that's the United States.
I mean,
Yeah, so you all of a sudden switch back to sudden switch back to liberalism and individualism, then you're going to be back to square one, where we are a big melting pot of different races.
So I mean, what his idea is to break down the United States and separate it, and to go back to how the United States started, which obviously, since we're now at our current point, it's inevitable that it's going to be mixed, that it's going to be integrated, and that it's a benefit to be in that state. What is not a benefit is this separatist collectivist idealism, which he's advocating to start his white ethno-state, because that's what's breaking down the country. The melting pot, everybody coming here and becoming part of the United States to get away from whatever, immigrants coming here and joining into this and nationalism is what built this country stronger.
Yeah.
And he's advocating to break it down, to go back to the start, to build back up what we already have. Advocating for this perpetual loop, let's just speed it up.
All right. Anybody else got
Which
anything
I
to
think
say?
that's why he sounds like he's flip-flopping on his viewpoint, is ultimately he wants white people to have their freedom and to be individualists, to grow and do what they want. But the only way to do that is to group them all together, separate them, and force everybody out through collectivism and getting rid of individualism for a time period and going to some sort of imperialistic totalitarian state.
Yeah, because there was a little
He's like
rant.
going to two opposites to come to the same conclusion where we're at right now.
Yeah, because he did go on for a 5 to 10 minute rant about how amazing white people are, where he's talking about we went to the moon and all of these great innovations in the United States, and I'm like, that wasn't I mean, I've gotten into arguments on other platforms about this. Yes, the United States did that. But you know who was leading the rocket program in the United States? Oh, yeah, there was German Jews, wasn't it? The people that Richard Spencer doesn't want in his ethno-state. The people, he's like, touting, oh, we went to the moon. You're like, yeah, the main people behind our rocket program were our German Jews.
And this was also in opposition or competition with Russia, which is white.
Yeah, that's why the whole IQ argument doesn't hold water, because you want to know what ethnic group typically test highest in IQ tests? Jews.
Yeah,
all right?
Asians
and
and
white
Jews.
nationalists don't like them usually.
Yeah, he's saying you can genetically test for Jews, and he said that earlier in this stream, where he was talking about the Jews have their own country; they don't need to be in his version of the U.S. And the other thing about this is, I was got into another argument with somebody, and they were talking about how many inventions the United States has made, and they claimed it was because it was white, and I'm like, think about any other empire in the history of the world. The dominant empire has the most inventions. It's because it's on top. And the time when the United States was booming in innovations, 1950s to the early 1990s, and maybe a bit of the 2000s, when we were like the number one in everything. It's because we were number one that you saw this massive explosion in the amount of innovations in the United States. If you look back at the Constantinople, when it was the center hub of the world, you see the massive amount of innovation. That's where the Enlightenment movement, the Renaissance came from.
The dominant ethnicity in Africa for thousands of years was black people, and they didn't even invent the wheel.
Okay, yes. But they invented a bunch of other things. If you're talking about like the Egyptian Empire, when it was ruling the world.
Black.
Yeah, Egyptian Empire, they invented like a lot of things as far as papyrus paper, writing on stone, a written language in general. That's all.
Yeah, but they weren't black. They were Middle Eastern people that moved.
Oh, they
south.
weren't black?
They were not black.
They would have been more or less brown or olive skin or something.
Or maybe I'll reword. They were
I think everybody's
Saharan, so they weren't.
Gotcha.
Missing with this point is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. What is that? Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the author of that spent a lot of time in Papua New Guinea because they were isolated and they had no technology.
Yeah.
They had like simple wooden tools digging crap out of the ground for, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 years. And he's wondering what happened. With the addition of Africa, it is either a Sahara desert, just wide open savanna with hardly any sort of natural resources, or just way overgrown jungle with tons of predators that people don't normally survive in. When you look at the Middle East and you look at Europe, optimal growth conditions for So I'm saying it's
there's multiple factors that go into it.
Egyptians aren't necessarily black, but Egypt is more of in that
more of the breadbasket area of the.
If you're spending all your life from the time that you can function as a human to the time that you die trying to stay alive, you're not going to invent shit.
Yes.
So
you're not going to invent shit if you're on a survival.
Priority. Inventions stem from a society that has a lot of free time and a lot of resources to where its citizens can go out and use that time to invent, to create, to make music, to make.
And it's usually those societies that are the dominant society, either of their region or of the planet as a whole. Because
there's no valid way in history to look back and say blacks haven't done anything. Probably because their starting point in society and in history as a whole, no point. Africa as a continent has some resources, but overall, it hasn't been the most hospitable place for culture to grow, other than northern Africa or along the Mediterranean.
And so a lot of their tribes
are the better.
Yeah. A lot of their tribes were subsistence tribes. It was just surviving. It was not. I mean, there's no time to innovate when all you're trying to do is feed your family and just survive, which is what most of the world was in until they found they had years of plenty and all that sort of thing, and then they could sit back and okay, how can we make it so that way we don't have to be subsistent farmers or subsistent hunters or those types of societies. Well, I just wanted to bring up one other big example of a country that was innovating more than any other at the time period when it was dominant. This is the Chinese dynasty. When they had their empires, gunpowder, silk, paper. And they how many printing presses is something that's started in China. Printing in general started in China. Those are not printing press, that was Gutenberg, but because that was an automated system, but the ability to print and copy things was Chinese. And it was one of the dominant empires on the planet at the time, not only white people there. So Richard Spencer's view that, once we get all white people, then we'll see all these innovations, it's like, no, you mix a culture of abundance and a lot of free time, and not a subsistence culture, mixed with freedom to invent, and you have a massive boom in inventions, which is what we saw in the 50s to the 1990s. Like a good 40, 50-year period where the United States was just like computers, the internet, rockets, nuclear programs, nuclear power plants. I mean, all of that was because we were number one. So we had the resources, we had the time to do something with them. All right, let's keep going.
I know it's really loud background noise, but one thing I'd like to add to that is if you look throughout history, the biggest period and longest period of enlightenment was actually in Iraq during the Islamic Enlightenment, prior to them going full retard under Muhammad.
Yeah, that was because that's when you actually see things like number system and all of these Arabic inventions. The university was developed at that time, and now people are saying that that's an Islamic institution. I'm like, no, the universities were before Muhammad. It was a huge Enlightenment culture, but then the warmonger Muhammad seemed to derail all of that. All right, let's 5 more minutes.
Become extremely stagnant since then because it is now a very totalitarian, militaristic ideology, and they've been stuck in the same state for 2,000 years now.
Which is kind of what Spencer's advocating for, something like that. Only instead of Islam binding it, you got your race binding it.
Just the color of your skin instead of that doctrine. Just something else that ties everybody and says, you need to do this. You need to be like this.
All right. So 5 more minutes. Let's see if we can get through the full thing.
Their own personal rights, their own duties, their own plot of land. That there will be a strong social pushback against any kind of encroachment on all of these wonderful things about society by an overweening state. Every state will reach a state of corruption and decadence. That's built in. But the question is, can there be a new?
Okay.
You know what? He mentions to prevent the government from encroaching in on all these wonderful things about society. You know what's also another wonderful thing about society?
What?
Curvy black chicks. That's right. I went there.
You like them BBWs?
Yeah, sure.
the big beautiful women, or is it? No, it's BBBW, right? Big beautiful black women.
Yeah.
Okay. You heard it here. The dark conservatarian likes them thick. Cushion for the pushing. All right, let's keep going.
New order that will safeguard the white race, that will lead to greater flourishing for European people than ever before, where we could reach the stars.
Listen, yes, it already existed. It was called the United States. The United States has been degraded by collectivism, by increasing bureaucracy. Individualism didn't kill the U.S. It wasn't killed by capitalism. We're not in late capitalism. We're in late socialism. If we have problems, it's because the government right now taxes half of what people make. It tells people what they can do from the moment that they're born to the moment they die. It levies every possible fee, creates every possible bureaucracy, and strangles itself. That's why we're having problems in this world. That's why a bunch of opportunists can play craptivist and say, hey, we need to censor all these other groups because we need to maintain the retarded status quo, which is exactly what it is. But the thing is, that was formed by white people when the United States was overwhelmingly right. You push for, like, one of the things that you push for is single payer, which is like the god of all bureaucratic programs. We tried that in our homogeneously white, it's like 98% white state. And our far left government ended up not wanting it because they couldn't even pay for it. I just don't understand. You're relegating the civic structure, the fiscal structure, everything to the back burner in favor of the racial argument. It's not.
Yeah.
I gotta say very quickly that Styx is really being the hard hitting straight shooter.
Yeah.
The harder hitting straight shooter than Richard or Sargon.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's very little...
he nailed it right there.
I should probably check out more of his videos.
Yeah, he's a weird-looking dude, and he's got some weird stuff on there about paganism and
he
stuff.
Likes to, run around shirtless in half of his videos.
Yeah, but he is...
If you're gonna watch Styx, go to the video, and then do something else on your screen, so you don't have to look at his bare chest.
Yeah, he's, like, bare-chested in all of his videos and interviews. But he's spot on with his criticisms and with his explanations of libertarian philosophy. I mean, man, the guy knows his stuff. And well, the thing about that is he knows his stuff, and he knows Richard's stuff, and he knows Sargon's stuff, and that's the thing that's why he has this advantage in this debate is he knows all three sides, and that's why he's able to just pinprick into the heart of the issues. And he kept trying to bring up the universal health care repeatedly in this conversation, and it kept getting either derailed or people speaking over him. But now he actually gets to hammer that point home. And yes, the universal healthcare system is something Spencer advocates for, emphatically. And even if he's able to succeed, sorry, what?
Styx was once a leftist himself, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, but okay. Even if Richard Spencer gets his white ethno-state and he succeeds and gets all of this peacefully, and his government manages not to collapse in the, by the separation or the segregation portion of it, it's going to collapse economically because he wants socialistic policies in his government that aren't sustainable. They require outside income in order to sustain those systems. Like right now, the only socialized Medicare systems we have medical systems is Medicare, Medicaid, and the military. And all three of them rely on people not participating in those systems paying into those systems. As soon as everybody's covered under those umbrellas, nobody outside the system is paying for them, and they collapse. Right, right now, they're getting so massive and imploded that they're going to maybe even collapse under the weight of themselves because our outside sources can't.
I mean, if everybody's paying into it, why should anybody pay into it? Why don't they just pay themselves?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's happening is anybody that has taken the time to live healthier lives, to eat better food, to take care of themselves will be paying for everybody else that just wants to gorge themselves or not take care of themselves, not exercise, not. It's the strong or the smart, I guess, those who are more adamant about how they live their life, having to take care of those who don't care. Yeah, that's an excess burden. That's just why.
On almost every political spectrum test, the values test, etc., there's a question on almost all of them that's worded basically, do those who can afford it deserve better health care? Okay, my answer to that is always yes.
Yeah.
Because it's not my responsibility to pay for somebody else's health care. The only time it's my responsibility to pay for somebody else's health care is if it's for the greater good of the nation, which would be children, veterans, and I mean, can you really argue that the elderly is for the greater good of the nation? Probably not, but on an ethical grounds, I would include them in there. Your average working age person with no severe disabilities, not my job, not my responsibility. They can do it themselves or they can die. I don't care.
Well, I would say the government's responsibility shouldn't be towards helping those people pay for their medical bills. I'm under the impression that if we have a government like we have right now, rather than spending those funds on providing health care for things, the government should be providing opportunity for people to pay for themselves. Providing either opportunities for people to increase their own wealth so then they can pay for their own medical bills themselves, or providing opportunities for them to pay, or to, through charitable programs, connecting people with, donors with people who need money. That should be a government institution. Like, okay, here's a group of people that have money and they're willing to donate to help people out in dire circumstances. Here's a group of people that need help in dire circumstances. We're just connecting you two, and we're not going to take. But right now, the government acts as a middleman and says, okay, you're going to have to pay money into our system. We're going to skim off at the top, and then we're going to give the rest to those people. And it's something crazy. Like, for every dollar that's donated to one of these medical causes or to anything that's charitable that the United States does, only about 40 cents of that dollar goes to the actual recipient. So we're losing about 60% of this money donated into bureaucratic fees and into running other programs and all this other stuff. If it was a straight up charity where it was these people are donating directly to those other people, you would see about 90% of that, if not more, going directly to the people who need it. But since the government gets involved, it's just bloated and too much of everything. The amount of money that should be in Medicare, even though Medicare is huge, the amount of money going into it is trillions of dollars a year. If not trillions, it's a couple hundred billion. I think it might be trillions.
I think in total domestic welfare spending, it's like $2 trillion or something a year.
Yeah. It's so that number. That's only like 40% of the actual money that is being spent or being taken in for that endeavor, because the government does everything backwards, has so much management, and it might be the other way around. Maybe it's 40% that gets cut out, and so only 60% goes to the recipients. But either way, that is a terribly inefficient system. That is horribly inefficient, woefully. Like, if the United Way is one of those charitable institutions, and they won't allow any charity into their organization that has more than 30% of their costs going to administration fees. So if the United Way was to accept the United States into its organization, it couldn't. It's like, no, you're spending too much money on your administration fees. You can't do your Medicare system and be a part of United Way. And 30% is freaking high for administration fees.
I don't want to interrupt your seminar on economics, but this stream mainly is a response on race and
let's get back to that.
I don't mean to be rude, but I do have work in the morning.
Gotcha. We'll try to get through the last 3 minutes here.
Not about what was, and it's not about, if you were arguing, Richard, for saying, hey, we're going to ban everyone who's not white from immigrating to the U.S., I wouldn't, by the way, even care. Because that's not abusing anybody who's already part of our civic structure. Go ahead, build the wall, preclude them all from coming, kick out any anchor babies, whatever. But what about people who are already here? And let's say, because this is what would happen. Let's say that most of them don't want to take your money or don't want to just listen to you when you say, well, leave, because we're white only now, blacks in the back. It's no colored only signs anymore. What about those some tens of millions of people who wouldn't want to leave? And what about those who are friends with them, family with them, who are white, who would take up arms to defend them? You're looking at more than half the population probably there. You're not looking at, you wouldn't even have a majority of the population on your side. You'd have probably a slim majority at most of just whites within the country. And you'd get you'd get your asses handed to you and hand this country to a bunch of communists in the process.
Refugee crisis.
Okay. So that's a very excellent point. I'm glad he made it.
Antifa will rule the United States. Bridget Spencer starts down this path.
I mean, yeah, it's realistic, is because that kind of enforces that Richard Spencer's viewpoint has to be enforced with the law over the will of the people, which is the exact opposite of what he was just arguing for 2 minutes ago, in this stream, where he's, oh yeah, whites inherently want individualism and they want to own their own stuff, and the law is just I forget what the exact term he said, but I mean basically the law is the how we
extension or embodiment.
Yeah, the extension or embodiment of what the civil structure wants. But the civil structure doesn't want his white ethno-state. Or the civic structure doesn't want that, so he wants to impose it, and the only way he can is via the law and making the law supersede his, civics. He's all over the place, and people debate him as if he's not, it seems like everything he says contradicts itself all over the place, and people debate him as if that's not what's going on. All right.
This is flowing in one direction. It is flowing into Berlin and Munich, and it is not flowing into Ghana.
That's only because they're idiots, though. To be fair, this is not going to be a subject we're in opposition on, the migrant crisis. But they're not flowing to the east because they're not going to get free money from you.
Hey guys,
it's not because we're white.
You are being yourself abused by a collective. Individuals aren't abusing you.
Okay. Well, he was talking about the immigration for a little bit there, and I wanted to keep that in there. Because he was saying that people are, oh look, they're coming to Germany, and right.
That is a lot of fucking background noise, by the way, Aspie.
Yeah.
I'm joking. How you guys doing?
Hey, you're breathing into your mic, I think.
All right.
I'm just I know. I put my mic up right next to my mouth. It's a habit of mine so that people can hear me. So what are they talking about in this section of the re-debate between
yeah. So they were just talking about Spencer brought up the immigration problem, like the refugee crisis. And he's saying, oh, they're not going to other African countries, they're coming to white countries. And he's using that as a point to say that, white countries are better. And then Sargon and Styx are pointing out, no, that the reason they're going to those countries is not because they're white, but because those countries are handing out free stuff.
Yes.
China.
That's why nobody's going to Poland, because Poland absolutely gives the middle finger to the rest of the European Union and says, fuck you, we're not giving these worthless pieces of garbage our money.
Yeah, and Sargon points out, so if they were looking for a prosperous society, they could easily just go to China. But they don't want to go to China because China's not giving them handouts.
Oh, China's even worse. China is terrible.
Yeah, China doesn't have doesn't have these welfare safety nets, and there's no universal Chinese college or healthcare, so the immigrants don't want to go there. They want to go to a place that has all the freebies. It's not because of the color of their skin.
Too, because my crusades and whatnot.
Yeah, if China instituted a universal healthcare system, I mean, obviously their country would collapse because there's too fucking many of them. But let's do universal healthcare 2 billion.
Yeah.
2 billion people.
No, it's things like that that sometimes make me think America was just a little bit more apathetic to of the things that we did in the past. Just everything that happened, before like 1980, we just forget about. We're just apathetic to it. Slavery, Jim Crow, Native Americans, whatever. We don't care. We don't, and a part of me is though, that's just terrible. Some people might say that the reason why we, admitted our wrongdoings is the thing that makes us uniquely American. But at the same time, there is that kind of idea, that kind of sentiment that I share, that I wish we were somewhat more apathetic, because I think our sympathy is the one thing that is killing like the black community and certain other communities like that, because we're so sympathetic that our sympathy is killing them. And, our guilt and whatnot. I just wish we could be because I think a little bit more apathy, or not apathy, but just a little bit more hard discipline or hard, just a different way that not giving into emotion would probably be better for the black community and whatnot.
Yeah. So if you, so I've talked about this previous in the past, but I do want to mention that this kind of reminds me of, so Jordan Peterson is giving lectures, or he's been giving lectures for a while, but one of his lectures he's talking about the overprotective mother and how that ruins a child. And that's essentially what the United States has done to the black community, is we've been overprotective, and we do everything like, we got to do, affirmative action and, all these different practices to make sure that the black community gets ahead, and we've got all these welfare programs and all these other things, and it's killing the black community, because it's the same as a mother who never lets their kid go out and experience stuff on their own. Like, these people where the mom doesn't let them do anything, and they're kind of like sissified. I mean, although it's having kind of the reverse effect in the black community where it's not sissifying them, it's they're becoming a little more like they don't have anything else to do. They never have to take care of themselves. They don't have any responsibility. And so they kind of join a gang, because at least then somebody pays attention to them and they can actually kind of contribute on their own, right? It's contribute.
What they're doing is they're tripping, and big government's always there to catch them before they get that bruised knee or that scraped up face. They're not letting them stumble, fall, and pick themselves back up.
Yes, because that is a very valuable lesson. If you always catch
the kid before he falls, he never knows the pain of his mistakes.
If the kid wants to touch if the kid wants to touch the hot pot, let him touch the hot pot.
Be my guest.
Be my guest. Yeah. Let him cry through it and just like, ah! Are you gonna do that again? No!
Yeah. And so that's part of the things he touches on in his new book, the 12 Rules for Life: An Antidote to Chaos. But he's talked about this on several lectures, and he talks about in his clinical practice of psychology, when he worked at elderly homes, they are specifically ordered not to do anything for a resident that the resident can't do for themselves. So that's, but yeah, that's the last thing I'm going to say on that, and let's just keep going, right? Or do you have anything else to add?
Were you talking about Richard Spencer with that whole psychology thing?
No, Jordan Peterson. That's Jordan Peterson's book. So yeah, he's talking about when you're in his practice, when he's actually practicing and he's dealing with people, the elderly, like in nursing homes and things like that, they are actually ordered not to do anything for the residents that the residents can do themselves, because the more you do for people, the less useful they become, and eventually they're entirely dependent on the staff, and then now you have to have one person who does nothing but takes care of this one individual, and like that one individual, like a couple weeks ago they were walking around just fine, but now you started opening doors for them and started making them bed and started lifting them out of their chair, and into the second you stop doing something for someone, they regress and they get worse. So that's the reason why they have to be ordered to not do anything that that patient can do for themselves.
I just want to say something very quickly. Aspio, I'd like to thank you for coming in here, because now I'm no longer the only straight white male in this stream, as this stream has been nothing but one white male, a bunch of mixed dudes, and a tranny. Hashtag my identity politics.
Goddamn motherfucking tranny, fucking everything up.
You're not white, HUMANe?
Technically, I'm mixed, but since I declare myself to be omniracial, I can be anything I want to. And right now, I choose to be white just to prove Dark Conservatarian wrong.
What are you What are you full of? Like, are you part
I'm full of shit.
Full of shit.
Please don't take that shit on your seat.
I am a quarter Korean, a quarter Greek, and like I don't even know what the rest of the stuff is. Like maybe some Polish, some French Canadian. I think someone was saying something about like a Canadian Indian or something. I don't know what tribe or anything.
Possibly
like
Ukrainian, maybe a little bit of Native American somewhere in there.
Ugh, there is way too much piss in your gene pool. I'm joking with you.
But
anyway, sorry. I just want to make that quick, funny comment. Let's continue on.
Yeah, and so I'm not even sure about the quarter Greek because Bapu, we were just down there for for Thanksgiving, and he's talking about all this stuff about his family, and I'm like, wait a minute, you don't even know how far back your genealogy goes, so you might not even be Greek. It's like so you may have some other mixes in there as well, so he may not be 100% Greek, which means, yeah.
My ancestry, part of my ancestry was Dutch, and we owned slaves in the 1600s. Damn it!
You will that will be held against you forever, and all of your children. So just don't have children because you had slaves in your family at one point in time.
Yeah.
So I'm HUMAne's older brother.
I know.
So we have the same background, but our grandfather is supposed to be Greek, so we're somewhere almost a quarter Greek, but he's from the island of Cyprus, so he's a Cypriot, which half of that is Turkish. So we possibly might have something mixed in there.
Yeah, and the other thing
we actually can't trace back.
You guys are some real mutts, then.
Yeah, and the other thing, so I don't know why we have a mostly.
We don't act, which is why we don't really ascribe to any sort of ethno state or understand what's with all the racism stuff because we're like, I don't.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, I'm part Native American, so give me back my land. All right.
Yeah, and our
mom was a bottle of whiskey and some casino chips.
Just give me a bottle of whiskey and some casino chips, and we'll be good. All right.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys.
Native American whiskey.
We had
I'm just gonna quickly say you don't look the part,
I know. I'm like 256 Cherokee, so it's not. So anyway, let's keep going.
Oh well, you're not pure white. You're not allowed in Richard Spencer's ethno state. Sorry, man.
Shit. What's funny is
you might as well be Senator Warren at this point.
Either. What's funny is Braving Rune's not allowed in his ethno state either because he's not pure white.
Yeah.
He's Egyptian.
Oh shit.
All right, let's finish out the last.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
No individual is capable of censoring you unless they're crazy and they shoot you in the head. But a government can say, "Well, that Richard Spencer is sure full of hate. We got to keep him from speaking." Or a collective like a tech site can say, well, no, Richard, you can't have a Twitter. You can't be on YouTube. You can't have this podcast on our domain registrar.
Why we need individual rights? It's because of the disproportionate power of entities that don't have any legitimate claim to control an individual or violate their rights.
Can I cut in for a bit, right? Richard, you're just legitimizing the
there's a cut there,
current establishment for censoring you. You are saying that you are a disruptive force in the current establishment, so it's okay if they censor you off the internet.
I understand why the current establishment would want to censor alt-right ideas because we threaten their legitimacy. No question.
Don't think it's wrong.
Don't you understand that this is why
wrong,
I'm
right or wrong? It just simply is.
Yeah, but you don't think it's
happening.
Wrong.
We should fight against it.
For exactly the same thing. You don't think that's wrong.
I am willing to censor. I am not a free speech absolutist. That's a stupid position.
You're not a free speech advocate, my friend. You are against free speech if you would happily censor people.
Yeah, Richard, it seems rather odd that you would complain about being censored yourself when you're literally saying that under your own rationale, it's fine for them to censor you.
It's bad for them to censor me because obviously I'm right. I don't understand why this is an argument.
It's good. The jury mate by the same logic.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the end of the clip that I have for today.
He doesn't understand how this is an argument. He gets caught in his hypocrisy, but no, I don't understand that why this is an argument. This is not a valid argument because fuck it, I'm white.
I think he said.
White people have all the rights everyone else does not.
I think he said that he's right, so it's not good that could potentially be censored because he's right, but it's okay to censor anybody that they view as wrong. That's fine. Go ahead and censor them.
All right, see you guys. I'll be back.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap this up in the next 5 minutes.
All
right. Anyway,
that was. Yeah. that was the end of the video I had, but that was one of the biggest points of like, Richard, really?
Just to let you know, I think I'm gonna be having a stream tonight, so be sure to hop on that if you can.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
If I'm available, I will. But
we also have to keep in mind that S-Man is kind of having his own stream in celebration of reaching 400 subscribers.
Is that tomorrow?
Whoop whoop.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I will
Bye,
see what
guys.
I can do. Yep.
So many streams to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of time. So I set aside time for the weekly stream on Thursdays, and everything else is whatever I can do or whatever I'm like, I really should be doing something else, but I don't feel like doing it. I'm gonna stream when I let that get the best of me.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know if there was anything else that you guys had to add about this video, but I think that Richard Spencer was being really self-destructive in a lot of his points, and and people do not want to realize that. The alt-right does not want to realize that, and just oh god.
Well, I don't think the left realizes that either, because this is exactly why. Like, this is a 4-hour stream, and I was breaking down. The longer he talks, the more these contradictions come out, and the more he shows himself to be that hypocrite where he's saying, oh, it's okay if I use censorship to... I mean, that sort of thing. He didn't come up in a roaming stream, even though roaming stream it was broken up into 3 different parts, but it was like an hour and 10 minutes or hour 15. And for the most part, he sounded coherent and sane, but the longer he talks, the more it's like, wait a minute, all of your stuff is falling apart. You're not consistent on anything, Richard.
No, so in essence, he's saying his ideology is...
He's white.
Oh, sorry, what was that, BTK?
I thought he said right.
No, he said you can't censor. I don't know his exact
He
wording,
said it's
but
wrong.
basically he was saying it's wrong to censor him because he is white.
I think he said right. I could pull that.
I heard white. I don't know.
I can pull that up again.
All I remember hearing him.
Spencer, how would you?
Yeah, all I remember hearing there and there was, I don't even understand how this is a valid argument, and yeah.
Under your own.
Either way,
I mean, I just got the implication that it's because obviously he's white and he's fighting for this white ethno state. That is, and so that is self-explanatory as to how everything he says is correct.
Okay, so
regardless if he said he's white or right, he's posing a double standard here, saying it's not correct for him to be censored either because he's white or right. That's kind of irrelevant.
Okay,
but he's saying it would be okay to censor other people, either being that they are incorrect and wrong, or that there's some other race. So it's just a double standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideology is that he's white. He's advocating that white people are better than everybody else, and so due to that fact, whatever they do to achieve their ends is in the best interest of the white ethno-state. Therefore, it is the correct thing to do, and everybody else is wrong. And it doesn't matter if they have points. They're not white.
And his perspective about speech mirrors what people on the left are doing, like the LGBT movement and the Antifa movement. They're like shutting down people's like, oh, how dare you speak? How dare Lauren and Gavin speak at these events? But it's like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you trying to silence me from protesting? And you're like, wait, it's okay if you shut down someone else's rally or someone else's speech. But if anybody tries to stop you from shutting down their speech, that's violating your right to freedom of speech. But that's Richard Spencer's mentality. It's like
their mentality, along with the Antifa viewpoint, is that you are spewing out things that are hurtful to the way we believe. Therefore, you are antagonizing us. You are causing disruption and potentially harm down the line. Things will go very bad for us if things don't go our way. So we are in the right, you are in the wrong. Therefore, you should not have the ability to keep spewing out this, whatever it is they're saying. And that's the same viewpoint that Richard Spencer has, rather than taking an intellectual standpoint of these are just words and it's a discussion and everybody should have a point to be heard. And those with the valid points will be taken seriously. And those with the ludicrous points, nobody cares. Actual discussion happens, but they don't see it that way. They see it as, I'm correct, and anybody who's opposing this view is obviously advocating for something evil or wrong or incorrect, so they shouldn't even have the floor. They shouldn't have an opportunity to spew incorrect fallacies. So
I would say that
it is the same viewpoint as what the extreme left is doing. That is correct.
Well, I think he's on the extreme left.
I would say that my philosophy is, if you are inconsistent with your principles, well, then your principles mean nothing.
Yeah.
That would be the correct assumption, but the right way to handle it is not to censor them or to take away his ability to say these incorrect or contradicting perspectives. It would be to allow him to speak and show that he actually sounds like a fool and doesn't make any sense. Let him defeat himself.
Yes, which is why I'm glad
if the
that...
left...
I was about to say, I'm glad
the
that
extreme left really
had...
wanted to censor or defeat people. They would actually do the same thing and let people like Richard Spencer, who are claiming that they're on the far right, pop up and say all this garbage, because then they would look just as stupid as the left is making themselves out to be.
Well, the other thing is
changing their points.
Letting him speak not only makes him look stupid, but it doesn't build up that buzz around him, which is what they're doing right now. Is they're like shutting down all these free speech events. It's attracting more people to those causes. Now compare the difference between Spencer and Jordan Peterson. Now, Spencer got a lot of hype because he was getting shut down, because he got punched in the face. But his movement, it grew, and then it disappeared. Like, right, other than this stream, Richard Spencer and all of that sort of thing has kind of disappeared completely, whereas Jordan Peterson has been consistently getting more and more press coverage. He's getting more and more out there. So in addition to Maps of Meaning, he's got his new book. I mean, for those who can't tell, I'm a pretty big fan of Jordan Peterson, and I haven't read Maps of Meaning, but I did get the 12 Rules to Life, and I'm reading through that at the moment. But he's been constantly in the news, right? His Channel 4 interview with Kathy Newman, where gotcha. Like that.
I wouldn't say exactly that the flame of Richard Spencer is completely dead, because there's this one channel that's called Kronos. It like grew from 5,000 to 10,000 subscribers in under 1 month's time. I mean, it ain't very fast if you compare it to a whole lot of other channels, but Richard Spencer is not completely out of the political loop. He's got a strong dislike squad and fan base.
So
Kronos is the one that cuts streams down into short videos, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, Kronos is the one that posts highlights of. He claims in his description that he is a right-leaning classical liberal / libertarian, but really he leans a lot towards the alt-right and Richard Spencer and Jean-Francois Garrity.
Because that's what his cut downs are. It's like, oh, watch as JF owns this guy, or watch as Spencer owns Sargon, and you're like, that's maybe, but Spencer, it's like Sargon did not look good in this debate, but Spencer came out to me, I was like, dude, how does anybody follow this guy at all? He's so. But the point I was making, comparing the two, is since Jordan Peterson actually is a smart person, he's freaking genius as far as I'm concerned. He's one of the smartest people I've ever heard lecture. But people were attracted to his situation because of the protests against him. People had not heard of him until the last 2017, 2016 when he's talking about Bill C-16, and then he showed up on the map, similar to how Spencer showed up on the map. But Spencer has grown maybe a couple thousand followers, maybe in the hundreds of thousands, possibly 500,000. Jordan Peterson is up there in the millions, in the course of 2 years. So because he's actually speaking the truth, and he's consistent, and he thinks about what he's saying, and he overanalyzes everything, and it's amazing to hear his mind working, because he's basically speaking how he's thinking, and a lot of his thought process he's working out as he lectures, and it's really amazing. But people are more attracted to that. And so, yes, the left brought attention to it, but people are more attracted to truth tellers than they are to someone like Spencer, because sure, they'll pay the initial attention to him because the left is like, hey, look at this guy, don't listen to what he's saying, don't listen to what he's saying. Ooh, wonder what he has to say. And then people check him out, and then they realize, oh, he's just a freaking airhead. He's just a blowhard. There's a whole lot of nonsense. And then
Peterson,
I
thought it was hilarious that the left was all like, "Oh my God, he's so transphobic." I watched his videos, his streams, his speeches. I'm like, "You're a bunch of fucking morons."
Yeah.
He's not transphobic in the fucking least bit.
No, he's pretty awesome.
What they're doing is the same thing that Trump has been doing, which is why he is actually won the election, is over-exaggerating and bringing things to an extreme to where people actually go look at it. Except for Trump did it on purpose. They're doing it on accident because they're trying to hide it. But the more they try and cover it up, prevent people from speaking, lie about them, make things up, it draws people's attention. And when their attention is drawn, then they look at this and they'll watch Richard Spencer's debates and his dialogue and say, dude's a nut. Everything he said, he contradicted himself. He wants to dominate and control this ethno state and move it over here, but yet he says he's for individualism and for it to grow and blossom. But the only way to do that is by controlling everybody through a strong government presence. It doesn't make any sense. And why would I want to do that? I like the United States.
I've been kicked off of Facebook on 2 accounts and kicked off of Twitter on 1 account for being transphobic. I'm like, really? I'm
come on. You know that you're a self-hating tranny.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I just self-deprecate myself everywhere.
Yeah.
And Richard Spencer's a socialist, so, you know, well, what do you expect?
Yeah, it's...
Hey,
Right.
By the way, speaking of economic leftism, I'm coming out of left field here, kind of, but HUMANe, have you like either seen the messages that I said in last stream that you had, or seen the one interview that I did with Cult of Ham?
I don't remember. So I know I saw that you did an interview with Cult of Ham, but I don't really like the guy, so I don't think I actually sat through the entire interview.
Yeah.
If you commented on my last video.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen those. Let me double check that, because usually I get notifications when people comment on my videos.
Well, no, I did not comment. I left a message in the chat on your last stream. Was what I actually did.
Oh.
But anyway, my point was, during the interview, as I was asking him questions, I was asking about his his changes to his own belief regarding minimum wage, and and he said that basically that he has kind of evolved on his stance. He said that he is at least willing to compromise, letting people choose whatever wage that they want, like let people have their liberty in that area, but he said that you need the welfare state to compensate for that. And in my personal opinion, that is a tolerable compromise. But then I asked him, did the minimum wage stream that you joined HUMANe Mind on have any contribution to your changing of your mind? And he said, yeah, kind of, more or less. So
that's
I mean,
news to me.
Watch the stream for yourself if you want to. Yeah, it'll probably piss you off at multiple points, but still.
Okay, and that's the thing with the argument for universal basic pay, or is it UBP? Universal basic
UBI.
UBI. Yeah, universal basic income.
Universal basic income.
Yeah, UBI. So even Friedrich Hayek argued for this, with the exception that this is the only form of welfare. That if UBI is the only form of welfare you have, it's a bottom floor, like you cannot go below this point. That might be maintainable, that might be sustainable if it's the only form of income, because it's distributed to everyone. That is a potential. I don't think it actually helps anything, and I think if the UBI becomes a standard for everybody in the United States, then it's right now, or when it's instituted, it will be enough to live off of. But as soon as like a couple of changes in the market occur, right? Prices rise to meet that UBI and all that sort of thing. You're going to get to this point where UBI is not enough to live off of. It may have started off with enough to live off of, but eventually it's going to get to the point where it's not enough, and then they need to keep increasing that UBI. So
and inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation will always be a constant if there's any sort of lending.
Yeah.
Well, the only way I can see that working is if it's not promoted as being like a permanent solution to a lazy
Well,
issue.
the thing with the UBI is everybody gets it, regardless of their income or regardless of how much they're making. It's just a supplemental.
But that still makes no sense. I mean,
I'm against that.
Are there still paper boys?
Yeah. No.
I don't think so.
There might be people who.
So jobs similar to that, you can become a paper boy at the age of 12. It's not child labor.
Yeah.
You go against child labor laws. It's voluntary, and it's only like 2 hours a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a way for kids to make some extra cash and stuff like that. There's no reason to set a bottom limit, because why would you ever pay more than 10 cents a paper? Nobody would buy your paper because it's too expensive. I think by setting these bottom limits, we increase the cost of goods unnecessarily, and therefore overall society is now paying more for things they shouldn't. It's an artificial inflation.
Yeah, and if you listen to Jeffrey Tucker talking about this, he's talking about he had it. So he's a libertarian.
Entry level jobs are just entry level. Get some skills.
So
when you get older and you've had a little bit of work experience, you'll be better. You won't be at minimum anymore.
Yeah,
it's just natural.
Yeah, so he's talking about personal experience because minimum wage is not that old of an institution. It's like within the last when was minimum wage instituted? Like 60 years ago, something around there. I believe in this 60 years ago, somewhere
HUMANE.
around there. Sorry, what?
I think S-Man is asking you a question. I don't know if it's directed towards me or you, but he asks, you want to have a stream at some point on gun control?
All right.
That's a good one. I was actually going to bring that up. There was just that shooting
because I contemplated delaying this a week and talking about the shooting that happened yesterday, but I opted not to do that because I'm like, dude, I just want to get this over and done with, and then we can move on to more relevant topics, and maybe we'll talk about that next week. Because I think the plan was to talk about religion starting next week, but maybe we should talk about gun control. Because have we done that on the stream? If not, the recent events are new.
They have done some. I vaguely remember having a discussion where it was brought up, but I don't think that was the main topic of debate.
Yeah. Okay, so he's asking if you're an ANCAP. No, Sinister is not an ANCAP. I believe I'm the only one in the group who is.
No, I think there needs to be a little bit of order, but I would say minarchist.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I like about something that's not like the anarcho-communist can't fall back and say, oh well, at least if communist fails, then we've got this backup plan. I think that's what makes the ANCAP at least superior in my mind is if ANCAP fails, then we just revert back to a minarchist government because that's how you get to ANCAP is you repeal the government until you get down to the lowest form and then you dissolve the lowest form. And if that results in chaos, then
naturally will result.
Then just reform to that last success. It's like a save state. You're like, okay, we had our minarchist government, and we suspended it for 4 months, and okay, everything's still good. Okay, then I think we're good to go without a government. Or if everything goes to complete chaos, we're like, hey, well, reinstate that. Apparently, that is essential to keep everything going good. I like minarchism as a fallback. So right now I think anarcho-capitalism is feasible.
I think ANCAP works for small groups, small societies.
Yeah, I think it might work on a large scale.
It does require a minimal type of government entity.
Okay.
You have to. You get 100 people in a room, and they're all supposed to be deciding on things. Somebody's got to hop up and say, okay, let's set some rules on how we decide things. Let's set some rules on how we're going to discuss and debate to make everything fair or whatever. It's just going to happen. The bigger the group, the more intervention on a governmental level there has to be.
Yeah, I would like to see it attempted at a larger scale. Prior to instituting it as far as getting rid of a government, I would like to see it start like either on its own little island or maybe just a county or a city and then expand it over time to a larger and larger area to see, okay, it can only grow up to this point, and after it gets this big, then it starts to fail, and so then you could have clusters of these anarcho-capitalist areas that are just so big, but not too big to At least that's my idea. Well, that's something that you would never hear from a communist or any of these other types of ideologies. We're like, hey, we want to just start our own off in a little area and test it out if it works from the ground up.
Well,
So
that's because it's already known that communism works on a small scale. A communal society that is small works.
But they never expand it slowly.
Large will never work.
Yeah, they never expand it slowly. So Adam Kokesh
It can't expand.
Yeah.
Anytime, yeah. So I'm 100% with BTK on that, and I've already said that before. The communism works on a very small scale. That's why they have communes. That's why they're named that. That's why you have communities. They're based off of that idea that everyone has at least similar living standards and ideologies, and so they interact with each other and respect each other based off of this similar value and moral and lifestyle belief that they have. But once it gets too big, it becomes just too diverse.
Okay.
It cannot be sustained.
But we're getting.
And I think that's the same thing would happen with an ANCAP society.
I don't
too
think
diverse,
so,
and
but-
we either have to keep splitting into smaller communities, or if it wants to remain as a whole, there has to be some sort of government entity to maintain that order.
Yeah, eventually.
Hey, BTK.
You got really quiet, BTK. 'Cause you were louder earlier.
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What's up, Dark Con?
So, what were you saying?
BTK, I'm gonna send you a link to my channel since you said that you're interested. Although, if you were to type in my name word or letter for letter, the Dark Conservatarian, you would probably find it right off the bat. But yeah. Oh, and
Right. And I will be sure that once the stream is up, that I will add those links into the description for each of these channels. So, okay, I'm getting ready to wrap this up, and because we kind of got off into other topics, and those are issues that we'll talk about. And so, S-Man, I am in the what's it called right now? The whatever the Twitter group is, whatever you guys have renamed it to. So if you want to hit me up there, we can talk. But I do want to resolve our issue that developed when we were talking about religion. So I would like to eventually have you back on this stream, so that way we can get some closure there. So I'm going to wrap this up unless anybody else has any other points to make, because we've already...
Yeah,
it's already
the copying
2 hours.
and pasting of the channel link is not working for me. You might
we're
just
at like...
and then tell BTK, hey, check out the description if you want to check out everyone's channels.
Because we're at the little bit over 2 hours and a half right now. So check out my project that I'm working on, funfair.com. That's hopefully gonna... Right now, I'm estimating May 1st when that's actually gonna launch. That's not a... That is the goal. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna make that, but that is still that's the most accurate date that I have right now is May 1st.
Hey, is your project being negatively impacted in any way by the collapse we're seeing of cryptocurrency?
Slightly, because that does put a damper on my finances. I was making like $70 a day off of my Bitcoin miners, and now that has turned into about $18 to $20 a day.
Hey, I just want to say something.
That goes a long
Speaking
way
of
to financing
Funfair,
my endeavor.
Speaking of Funfair, have you been seeing Mr. Dapperton advertising your website?
Yep. So.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, and that was one of the benefits of being a patron. So those are paid ads. So I paid for those back in November or December, and he's So that's pretty cool. He's much bigger
Geek
channel
Thulu,
than
right?
me. What?
Geek Thulu?
Geek Thulu? What about it?
Yeah. On one of his live streams the other day, I got him to talk about it for like 5 seconds.
Oh, that's cool.
So.
Oh, okay, because he's the guy that you work for, right? Oh, yeah. All right.
Huh?
Or you do podcast for, right? Wasn't he the guy that you were asking about the how to stream videos in a stream?
No, that's Bubonic.
Oh.
Okay. Geek Thulu's got. He's everywhere, and like everybody that I watch pretty much is in his server.
Okay.
But yeah, he He mentioned it the other day in front of like 300 or 400 viewers. So
nice. Yeah. So I'm still working on fine tuning that, and still waiting on the guys, my development team, to give me a more finalized build. It'll still be a couple of weeks before I actually, because right now it's February. So it should, by the end of February, I should have the final build of theirs, and then I have to put the two together, and then we got to troubleshoot everything, because I'm working on the database half, and they're working on the application itself. So we got to put those two pieces together, and then I've got all of the month of March and May, or March and April, to put them together and do all my testing before the system launches in May. Sounds like that should be a lot of time, but considering that is not my full-time job, that I think that's going to be cutting it close to make it to that May 1st deadline. So I may have to delay it by a month, and maybe we'll start in June. Well, there's the other thing of, so they're telling me that I can set up the entire site using Amazon Web Services, and that'll take care of my bandwidth and database needs for the first year. But after that, the price is going to be too expensive for me to maintain after the first year, in which case then I'm going to have my own hardware. So if Funfair doesn't take off as successfully, and if I don't have enough money to purchase hardware and purchase bandwidth, then it's only going to last a year, which is something I want to avoid. I'm like, yay, I got this site up and running, and it's, after 1 year, it crashed the same way as VidMe, and that's what I'm trying to avoid at all costs. And if I have to delay the launch of it by a month or two in order to achieve that stability, then I may end up doing that. But we'll see. Right now, it all kind of comes down to finances. Because I've already put 10,000 towards it, but I think I'm going to need another 10,000 in order to launch on May 1st. I mean, there might be a couple of areas where I can save costs or cut down on that. But that is the plan for that. And right now, out of that 10,000, I have maybe 150 raised on the GoFundMe site and things along those lines. Alright, other bit of shilling before I close is, if you are not a fan of Barbara For You to See, you should definitely check out her channel. She released a video today talking about the shooting in Florida, and raised some very interesting questions that I had not heard anybody else bringing up, and I started looking into some of that earlier today, and I'm like, really? So the guy had freaking grenade, like 19-year-old with grenades and an AR-15 despite a criminal record. That's what? Behavioral issues that are documented that should have come up in the background check. The fact that he was able to escape the school by blending into the crowd, and then still for some reason they have an AR-15 that's registered to him, and I'm like, where did they find this? How did he sneak out into the crowd? Yeah, so she has a video clip of somebody being interviewed on national TV talking about a second gunman that has been kind of pushed under the, it was on national TV that this woman was interviewed and was stating this, and that's kind of like nothing has been, I mean, that's kind of been under the radar for everybody else. You're like, it could be that she's lying, or it could be I don't know. That is a kind of a red flag going on for this situation. But she made a very interesting video. Check it out.
I think I'm pretty much going to talk about the school shooting in like an episode of Strike Force over this next weekend.
Yeah. So let me know in the group chat and stuff like that so I can attend there. I think that was everything I wanted to talk about this week. If you stayed this long, thanks for staying, and I'm gonna go ahead and close out. Where is?
I was kind of wanting to make closing statements.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Wait, we're still live?
No, we are still live. I haven't closed out yet because I'm looking for the freaking window that has that.
All right. Well then, to BTK, to Sinister D-Boy, and to everyone actually probably watch this stream, check out my channel. I do response videos to progressives and multiple other people as well. Far right wingers. I have my own news show. I have categorized videos, I have a playlist, or little section of playlists of categorized topics, ranging from abortion to religion to a little bit of gun control, a lot talking about economics and so forth. And so, yeah. And as always, to all the extremists out there, identity politics sucks.
All right. Any other closing statements? Because I found it buried under. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Always
6, 7.
Pleasure, BTK. Nice talking with you again, Dark.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, HUMANe, and yeah.
Yeah, I've got 13 instances of Google Chrome open right now. Damn. And some of them have multiple tabs. So I was looking for my YouTube channel that actually has a stream going. All right. Thank you for joining me, and if you like this kind of content or political analysis, like and subscribe this video and all of that usual stuff. And I'm going to end my stream. Thanks for joining me.
Good night.